Welcome to J is for Justice podcast. If live breaking news and following true crime is your thing, then please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you like what you see in my videos, please consider giving them a thumbs up. Hello again, my fellow chin watching, trial watching, Daybell watching looking asses. Welcome to J is for Justice. How are you guys? It's Thursday. Has it been a long week for y'all? It's kind of been a long week for me too. It feels unusually quiet for some reason. Y'all, I got to show you a couple things. So I'm going to be up and down for a minute because I made ribs in the air fryer and they took longer than I thought. I thought, oh, this is going to be, faster. It isn't. But check out my new lantern. I don't know if you guys can see. You probably can't. Oh, yeah, you can see the colors. See that, shiz? Do you freaking love it? Just saying. Aldi, $10. And watch this. I am so thrilled with this. Watch. Hello, everyone. Wait. Hello, everyone. Welcome to J is for Justice. It's the little things, guys. It's the little fucking things in life that make us happy. So, yeah, if you want to pick up one of these lanterns, they're rechargeable. And everybody makes fun of me because I love my Albies. So anyways, I'm going to start this. We're going to start with day 9. We're going to start with cross-examination. We're getting right back to where Pryor was cross-examining David Warlocks. Okay. The fat shaming, yeah, I kind of heard a little bit of that. He's just an old school kind of guy. He's a little rough around the edges. All right. Well, welcome in. I want to say hello to the moderators that are here. We've got Karchi and Karchi. I don't think we have anyone else at this moment. So thank you so much, Karchi, for being here. But anyways, I'm going to, what brand is the best? I don't know. I think mine's a Ninja. They were sold out at yours already. Oh, well, that stinks. All right, guys, let's get started on this. And I'm playing it at 1.5 speed. Let's see if that's going to work. Thank you for joining. Again, this is day 9 of the Daybell trial. And then we'll move into day 10. So this is cross-examination continuing of David Warlocks, Melanie Gibbs, then boyfriend, now husband.
Follow the court's admonishment on your affirmation each day. When we concluded yesterday...
I'm so sorry. We had that fucking gain on. Y'all are all going to kill me. I am so... That had to be loud as hell. You know what?
Everybody does that. It's okay.
Everybody does that a time or two. It's okay. I apologize. All right, I fixed it.
The witness, Mr. Warwick, was under cross-examination, which will be continuing this morning. So, Mr. Pryor, if you're ready to proceed with continued cross, you can do that. As you make your way over to the podium, and you can do that now, Mr. Pryor, I'll just note to the witness, Mr. Warwick, you are still under oath for your questions. And I just want to confirm, did you review any of the trial testimony since you left the stand yesterday? Okay, you did not. Can you check your microphone also to make sure that's working?
No.
Okay. All right. Mr. Pryor, then if you'd like to continue with cross, we can commence this morning. Thank you.
Morning.
Morning.
Before, I guess where I'd like to start, Mr. Warwick, is did you have an opportunity either yesterday or today to talk to the prosecuting attorney about your testimony?
No.
Prior to testifying in this proceeding, did you have an occasion to talk to the prosecutor at any time about your testimony?
No.
Do you recall testifying in a preliminary hearing in August of 2020?
Yes.
Okay. Subsequent to that, did you have an occasion to communicate either directly or through your wife with the prosecuting attorney about the manner and the substance of any of your testimony?
No.
Did you have an occasion to exchange an affidavit or a document between you and your wife and the prosecutor and the police?
I don't recall that.
Okay. Is it possible that the prosecuting attorney or law enforcement showed you an affidavit of facts and had you go over that for accuracy?
Yes.
Okay. So you did go over an affidavit, correct?
I don't know if it was an affidavit, but
It was a document.
yeah.
And in that document, it detailed the facts of this particular case and what you would be testifying about, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then there were some revisions to those documents. In other words, you would make suggestions and send them back to the prosecuting attorney, and then they would send it back. And there was a little bit of a back and forth. Do you recall that?
Nope.
Okay. Do you recall your wife bringing you an affidavit or court document saying, the prosecutor would like you to take a look at this and see if this accurately reflects what your testimony is going to be?
No, I don't.
But you do recall going over an affidavit that that was prepared by the prosecuting attorney for your review, correct?
I would say yes, according to if I'm understanding this correctly.
Okay. So in other words, there was a document prepared. You were to review that document. And then at that point, you were to return it either through your wife or directly back to the prosecuting attorney. Is that right?
I never did take it. It was just,
You never did what?
I did not take the document.
Did you read the document?
I did read it.
Did you correspond in any way with the prosecuting attorney about how and what changes would be necessary to that document?
No,
Okay. Did your wife do it for you?
no.
Thank you so much, Sherry.
I want to go back to something you said originally. You talked and you used a couple of adjectives to describe Chad, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think one of them you said was quiet.
Yes.
Saw that yesterday. I don't recall that
Quiet.
you used the words humble. Was that one of them? Humble?
Statue.
I was the words I used is he was kind and yeah, he was meek and humble. I've never seen anything different.
Okay. And throughout all of your interactions with Mr. Daybell, that's the way you found him. You found him as a very meek person, correct?
Correct.
You found him as a very humble person, right?
Yes.
You found him as a very quiet person. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And deeply religious.
I'll be right back.
Yes.
And you may not have agreed with all of his religious beliefs, correct?
Correct.
And he would not necessarily believe with all of your religious beliefs. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Okay. But you respected each other for having your respective religious beliefs. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Now, I talked to you a little bit about visions and about vibrations. I want to talk to you a little bit about seances. Do you understand the term seance?
I do.
Okay. Now, did you or with your wife or knowledge of your wife ever participate in a seance?
No,
Okay. Do you have any knowledge as to whether or not your wife participated in a seance?
I do not.
Okay. And I previously asked you about the 7 gatherers, but I'm going to ask you again. You have no knowledge whatsoever of what the 7 gatherers are. Is that right?
Asked and answered, Honor.
Overruled.
You have no knowledge of what the 7 gatherers are. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you testified in a preliminary hearing. I believe it was in August of 2020. You recall that?
Yes.
What was the date of your marriage again?
It was December 12th, 2020.
Okay. So you testified in a preliminary hearing about 4 months before you got married. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we had your wife on previously, and she talked about the fact that you live in a different state than she is. Is that right?
Yes.
And she lives somewhere in Arizona. We don't need to say where. And you live somewhere in Utah. Is that correct?
Correct.
And how long have you folks lived separately?
Probably up 2 years now.
Okay. And how long did you actually live together?
Overruled.
How long did you live together?
Several months.
Meaning 2 or 3 months?
No, it was a little longer than that.
How much longer?
I don't recall.
Okay. Would it be as much as 8 or 9 months?
It could have been.
Okay. But several months.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, isn't it true that the reason you got married is because you were trying to avoid having to be forced to testify against each other in a criminal proceeding?
No.
Okay. I want to go over with you again some of your testimony with the prosecuting attorney. You made mention of a timeline. You said you went to a park during one of the days. I think you came in on a Friday, right?
Friday night,
But you don't remember about what time.
I would think about 7:30.
Okay. And then you said that you saw Chad several times over the weekend. Is that right?
Yes.
How many times?
I would say more like a few times. Like I would say 3 or 4
Okay.
that I can actually recall.
Okay. And one of them you described as being in a park on a Saturday. Is that right?
I think, no, that was on Sunday.
That was on Sunday.
Mhm.
Okay. Did you see Chad on Saturday?
Yeah, yes.
When did you see him on Saturday? What time?
I would say it was late morning or early afternoon.
Okay. Okay. And what was the purpose? That was the time when you folks had that discussion about Tammy and some of the other items that you talked about. Is that right?
Yes.
That was the significant discussion where the vast majority of what you spoke to Chad about took place on that Saturday. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you didn't see Chad on Friday. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And then you got up on Saturday and in one report to the police, you mentioned that you slept in Saturday and then ate breakfast at Lori's condo. Do you remember telling law enforcement that?
I don't.
Okay. Do you dispute the fact that maybe you slept in and ate breakfast on Saturday morning?
No, I just don't remember.
Okay. And then what you did is you guys got prepared and went to a seminar called the Firm Foundation Saturday, right after you got done eating breakfast. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And according to your daughter, your wife's testimony, you spent the better part of the day and the evening at the Firm Foundation. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is this, is that if you were at this Firm Foundation all day and into the evening late, how is it that you met with Chad in the apartment on Saturday?
Because we were not
Hey,
not at the
guys.
whole event.
Okay.
We didn't attend the whole event.
And if your wife said you did attend the whole events and that she took pictures for over 9 or 10 hours, that's something she's mistaken about, right?
If she did, yes.
Okay. And you left the event during this event and came back and went to Lori's to eat. Is that right?
I don't remember.
Okay. All right. So you also don't remember talking to Chad on Saturday, do you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. And then when you got back from the convention late, you folks decided that you would consider starting your podcast. Is that right?
No,
Oh, you didn't have an equipment failure of your podcast on Saturday evening?
no.
Okay. And then you, again, expressed to law enforcement that you slept in Sunday morning, right?
I don't recall.
Okay. And did you see Chad at all on Sunday?
Yes.
When did you see him?
At the park.
Which park is that? Do you know?
I just know it was at Rexburg.
Okay. About what time was that?
I would say late morning,
Late morning.
if I'm recalling correctly.
Okay. Late morning, you saw Chad on Sunday. Do you recall meeting out at a 80 acres piece of land late Sunday afternoon?
Yes.
Okay. And you were there with Lori,
No, Lori wasn't there.
Alex,
Alex
Melanie.
and Melanie.
Okay. And nobody else was there, right? JJ wasn't there.
Who? Who'd you say?
JJ.
Who?
No.
Oh my God, I hate this guy. Warlocks.
When you met with Chad at the park on Sunday, how long of a meeting was that?
I would say a half hour.
Okay. Did he just come right over and say, let's go out to a park, or was there another purpose behind that?
No, they wanted us to come over to the park.
Okay. Who's they wanted?
Chad and Lori.
Okay. So Chad showed up in the park, or did he come over to the condo and then you all went over to the park together Sunday morning?
I really don't remember.
Okay.
You liar. You remember.
But then later on in the afternoon, you met a realtor by the name of Ron Arnold at a piece of 80 acre piece of property, right?
Yes, him and yes, he showed up later.
Well, he showed up with Chad later, did he not?
Yes, he did.
And what I find interesting is that you had noted in previous reports that he showed up with Chad and Chad was wearing his church clothes. Do you
Oh, hold on. There's an objection. Can you repeat that into the microphone, Mr. Wixom?
Yes, Judge, that was argumentative, at least the first portion of the question or statement.
Overruled.
Chad showed up at that meeting on the land in the 80 acres with Ron Arnold, and he
Ron
was wearing
Arnold.
his church clothes, right?
Church
That's
clothes.
right.
So he had gone to church that morning.
Yes.
His church shoes.
So how is it that he met with you if he was at church in the morning?
This was the afternoon.
Well, I'm talking about the park.
Well, this was after the park.
Well, that's what I mean. He showed up at the.
He was serving in his calling, and him and Ron were serving together, and they came over. And
Okay.
I did not know they were coming over because I said I do not want to do any business on Sunday.
Well, I think you're missing my point, and I'll try to be a little clearer.
I
Okay.
appreciate that.
All right. You're welcome. What I don't understand is that if Chad was at church, engaged in church activities Sunday morning, and engaged in this calling Sunday, how is it that he met you, Lori, and Melanie at a park on that very same Sunday?
I don't know that he was at church Sunday morning.
Okay. Well, isn't it true that you told the investigators that he was showing up in church clothes with another gentleman who's a real estate agent?
That was in the afternoon. Yes.
Right. And isn't it true they told you that they just came over from attending church?
No.
Okay. And if Mr. Arnold were to get on the stand and say that's exactly what he told you, would that be an inaccurate statement by Mr. Arnold?
Well, they were attending their calling, so in a way they're attending church, but it wasn't the services.
Okay. Okay. So these visits that you claim you had with Chad were on Saturday when you were at a convention, is that right? And you happened to just take a break from a 10-hour convention that you were with your wife, right? To visit with Chad. Is that right on Saturday?
I'm trying to recall what time we saw Chad on,
Okay.
what time I saw Chad on Saturday.
Oh, so possibly it could change now, is that right?
Well, no, I just don't remember. I just know that I was not at the whole conference.
Okay.
I didn't attend the whole conference, so
Sir, isn't it true you didn't see Chad on Friday?
yes, it's true. I did not see him on Friday.
And isn't it true you didn't see him on Saturday?
No, that's not true.
And isn't it true, sir, that on Sunday, the only time you saw him is when he went out to an 80 acres with a couple of other witnesses, and that's the only contact at all you had with Chad Daybell over that weekend?
Objection, argument.
not true.
I have
Hold on,
nothing else.
Stop. All right, Ms. Pryor, Ms. Warwick. I'm sustaining that objection. I'm striking the response. Mr. Pryor, next question.
I'm done, Judge. Thank you.
All right. Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Morning, Mr. Warwick.
Good morning.
So I want to start by covering some of the questions that you were asked initially this morning. Do you recall the defense attorney just asking you whether or not yesterday you had met with prosecutors about your testimony? Do you recall that question?
Yes.
And you answered no.
Yes.
Do you recall meeting with me yesterday?
I don't. I mean, I talked to the hall, but we didn't talk about the case.
What about the day before?
What is this all about?
No.
Let me ask this. Were there ever times that you and I, prior to you coming into court yesterday and testifying, were there times that you and I did meet and we did discuss your potential testimony?
Yes.
When's the best time that you, let's try that. To the best of your recollection.
This dude
when did we
doesn't
do that?
remember shit.
Probably a couple months ago, will be my guess.
And upon your arrival to Idaho Falls, to Boise a couple of days ago, did we also meet again?
No,
You don't recall that?
I don't.
Let's move on.
I'm not sure, Lisa. I know he's a liar. The next one is going to be Brandon
You were
Boudreaux.
asked some questions by the defense about the way that you characterized Chad. Do you remember those questions?
Yes.
And I think the words quiet and kind and meet came up. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, to be clear, over the
Hi,
last several
Jess.
years, you've met with law enforcement a few different times, haven't you?
Yes.
Do you remember which law enforcement by any chance that you've met with?
No. I don't
I
remember.
probably remember more by face than name.
Do you ever remember
He
discussing with
sounds
law
so
enforcement
helpless.
your feelings about
Chad.
whether or not you liked Chad? Do you remember that?
Well, liking Chad or liking his ways?
Liking Chad.
His ways.
I'll say yes. It's vague, but I remember.
What
It's overruled. You can continue to answer.
do you remember about telling law enforcement about whether or not you liked Chad?
Just the only thing I can recall that I was struggling with is when he approached me about doing a book, I told him that I needed time to
Hey, darling.
come to understand if that was right and if it was right, and then I needed to decide who if it was to be done. And for the next year, it was like when he reached out to me, he just didn't acknowledge the grounds that I had set, and he was kind of forward about. He was ready and wanted to go forward, like I had already agreed, and I never had.
What?
That's the only thing I can recall right now anyway. I think that's what you're referring to.
Him and Melanie have the same pathetic, like, I didn't know. Oh, God.
Is it possible that you use even more descriptive language about how you felt about Chad in that interview at that time?
I mean, it could be possible, but I'm not recalling it.
If you had an opportunity to review a police report from June of 2020, do you think it's possible that could refresh a recollection about that part of your conversation?
Yes.
Your Honor, with that, may I offer the witness a copy of the report from Detective Hermosillo from that same date?
Any objection from the defense? All right, Mr. Wixom, if you'll reference
Air fryer
the
ribs.
precise date of the interview and also instruct the witness that he's just to refresh recollection with that, not read it into the record, for example, or read from it.
Will do, Your Honor, certainly. So perhaps I missed, I thought I indicated that the date of the interview was June 8th of 2020 with Detective Hermosillo. If I might ask the marshal to hand this to the witness. And sir, the court's instructing you, as normal, that you're not to read this report to the jury. Just take a moment when you receive it, review it, refresh your recollection. When you're done reading it, either turn it over or offer to hand it back to the marshal, and then I'll ask questions, okay?
Okay. Into the microphone, please, Mr. Pryor.
Judge. Just to clarify, Judge, I didn't recall a June 8th interview with Officer Hermosillo, but I did have a recollection of a June 3rd. So counsel may want to correct his date. My recollection is it should be a June 3rd is when Officer Hermosillo interviewed Mr. Warwick from my recall.
I'm referring to the date referenced in the very report that we've just handed to defense counsel. That's the best date that I'm aware of, Judge. It's the date recorded in the report.
Okay, well, we'll go off the date listed in the report.
Okay. I highly recommend air fryer ribs. I'm not going nowhere,
Judge, can I
Karchi.
point to your native objection when Mr. Warwick is done?
You may, once he's reviewed that report.
Warlocks. Him and Mel Gibb are guilty as shit. Whoever said that, I agree. They should be behind bars. I love taco salad.
But in the interest of time, may I direct the witness to a specific portion of the report to read to himself?
Look at Chad and
Thank you.
Pryor are busy.
Mr. Warwick, I would call your attention to page 4 of that report and invite you to read the last 2 paragraphs, please, to yourself.
Aldi ribs, $9 for a half slab, or I'm sorry, for a full slab of baby backs.
You'll just turn that over then. Well, go ahead, Mr. Wixom, but I understand Mr. Pryor may have an objection, but you can ask whatever question you've got up next after that review.
Thank you, Your Honor. And just for clarity's sake, for the record, upon looking at my copy, the supplemental report that was handed to Mr. Warwick was written and dated at the top for June 20th, 2020. But defense counsel is correct that the interview did occur on the 3rd of June of 2020.
No questions, Judge, at this point.
Okay, thank you. You can proceed, Mr. Wixom.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Warwick, having had a chance to review that paragraph, did it refresh your recollection?
Yes, it did.
Would you please explain to the jury, what was it that you told Detective Hermosillo in June of 2020 about Chad?
I was really angry that he called Melanie and told her not to talk to the police.
Why were you angry?
Because when someone makes a call like that, there's something wrong. And I had no idea what was going on. My mom had just I was on the phone with my mother because she just got diagnosed with cancer.
Objection.
So I was on my way over to.
Judge, objection,
Sorry.
Hold on. What's the grounds?
relevance.
Overruled. You can continue, Mr. Warwick.
Here's the relevance. I was on the phone with the broken down mother trying to get to her. Melanie's on the phone with Chad. And then when we both got off the phone, Melanie was really quiet and I could tell she was really upset. So I just asked her, I said, what's going on? She
Judge,
said,
objection, calls for hearsay.
Yeah, this invites hearsay, sustained.
Get it, Pryor.
Do you happen to recall anything else that you told to Detective Hermosillo in that interview about your feelings about Chad?
yes,
What else do you recall?
that he was manipulative.
Can you explain what you meant to Detective Hermosillo when you used the word manipulative?
Like, he gets people's confidence, and then he uses that confidence for his favor.
Confidence?
So I'm going to invite you to explain to the jury and reconcile how you can
Put your chin
your
in the
statements that
air.
Chad was kind and humble and meek, but you also think he's manipulative.
You just don't
Yeah,
care.
because all my interactions with Chad were kind, humble, and meek. It was that situation that happened much later. I just wasn't in that time frame. So that's when I saw a different Chad.
What was that different Chad? Describe that different Chad.
To call and tell somebody, literally tell them not to take the call with a very authoritative voice.
What?
When you said authoritative voice, did you hear him on the phone?
No, I didn't. I just, after Melanie shared with me what the call had just happened.
You didn't even hear it.
You were asked about the reason behind your marriage with Melanie. You remember that question from the defense counsel?
Yes.
Why is it that you married Melanie?
Why is it?
Listen to this.
Because she's a wonderful, wonderful woman, and she was very good with my Down syndrome boy and with all my children.
With my
And
Down
we're very
syndrome
compatible in many
boy.
things.
Is
God.
there any question in your mind that the two of you have a loving relationship?
No,
And in fact, it was suggested that perhaps your marriage was to avoid testifying against each other. Do you recall that?
I'm going to object.
Yes.
And I think I got the objection in time, Judge.
Yes, grounds.
But it's leading.
Judge, I'm just,
Overruled. You can answer.
well,
What?
Your Honor, could we ask Madam Reporter to repeat that? I want to make sure that I did it correctly. If she'd be kind enough to do so.
You may. Okay. And I'm going to repeat that for the record. The last question was, and in fact, it was suggested that perhaps your marriage was to avoid testifying against each other. Do you recall that?
I do recall that.
Have you ever been charged with any type of criminal charge related to this case in any way?
No,
Should you have? Yes.
Your Honor, may I have permission to approach on one last topic?
Approach the court?
Yes, sir.
Sidebar?
If we may, yes.
Very well.
Do, 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 do. We need Jeopardy music for this. Speed it up. Little darling, speed it up. Let's see how many times he opens his laptop. Dum Chad. If you're just joining, welcome in, welcome in. It's Air Fryer Rib Night and Daybell Highlights. Welcome. Chad is wearing yellow on day 9. This is day 9 cross-examination of David Warwick, a.k.a. David Warlocks. Sorry. They're really protecting warlocks here. At least there's no white noise, though. Lisa.
You can continue, Mr. Wixon.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Warwick, you were asked some questions by the defense about this meeting that you had with Chad whenever it occurred that weekend. Do you recall those questions?
yes,
In fact, part of those conversations involved his relationship with Tammy, his wife.
yes,
Do you recall whether or not Mr. Daybell ever indicated to you the status of Tammy's health?
yes.
What did he say?
He said that she was healthy.
And was that in relationship to the, let me withdraw that. Give us the context of how he
He just
explained to you
said
that
she
she was
was
healthy,
healthy.
please.
I was asking him about his marriage, about what kind of wife and mother, and then he told me that she was going to be passing because he was given a dream or vision that she was going to be passing, and then I asked him about her health, and he said she was healthy.
Thank you. The last couple of questions, Mr. Warwick, without intending to be facetious. Have any of your own personal visions or spiritual experiences ever led you to think that you personally have any kind of superpowers?
No,
Have they in any way caused you to feel like you have some prominent position in whatever you believe the last days events are?
no,
Have any of your visions or personal experiences ever revealed to you propriety or a way of dealing with people that you believe are possessed?
no.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wixom.
Judge, I think there's now some recross.
Briefly, Mr. Pryor.
Okay, we get a brief recross here from Pryor. Get him, Pry guy.
So this discussion about Tammy's health, it's the same discussion that took place supposedly on the Saturday between times you were at the seminar for the Firm Foundation, right?
That'd be the best of my recollection, yes.
And Chad mentioned to you during that so-called Saturday visit that Tammy would be passing sometime in the future, right?
Yes,
And you were aware that Chad had made that revelation well before he ever met Lori Vallow, right?
I heard that he had, but I'd never heard it before.
And what I'm having some difficulty with is that he's telling you that his wife is going to be passing sometime in the future, and yet he also tells you contradictory information suggesting that she's just healthy as can be, right?
I don't know if it's contradictory, but
Okay.
yes,
Now, the prosecutor asked you, you've never been charged with a criminal charge, is that right?
yes,
But the day and the evening or the morning that JJ Vallow was murdered, you and your wife were at Lori Vallow's condominium that night, right?
Boom.
yes.
Nothing else, Judge.
Oh,
That'll conclude testimony then.
Damn.
Mr. Warwick. Is the state intending any recall of the witness?
damn.
At this time, we would release Mr. Warwick from the state's perspective.
Mr. Pryor, would the defense have any intention to recall this witness?
Judge, he's under subpoena, and depending on what testimony comes forward in the future, we'll have to make that decision. So we'd like him to remain under subpoena at this point.
And he kept him under subpoena. Oh my God, that was priceless.
Mr. Warwick, then you're still subject to the court's exclusionary order in this case. You may be recalled since you're under subpoena from the defense, so you're not permitted to watch any trial testimony or discuss your testimony with anyone else until that time, all right?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. You can go ahead and step down, and then we'll have another witness called once the state's ready.
Okay, so the next witness is Brandon Boudreaux, which is Melanie's ex-husband.
State's next witness, please.
State would call Brandon Boudreaux.
And 2 hours and 43 minutes. Let's go. We're going to go to cross of Brandon. Hang on.
Charles Vallow and Lori Vallow quite frequently, is that right?
Nation.
I know.
Need a moment?
No, I'm okay. We can go.
You mentioned you had contact with Charles Vallow and Lori Vallow quite frequently, is that right?
Yes.
What was the frequency with which you had contact with Charles Vallow from when you first met him to the time of his death?
It varied by the years. Sometimes when he lived close to me, I'd see him often. I could see him every week at sometimes. And then there was other times where, he traveled for work, so I might not see him for a couple months. And they also lived further away, so sometimes I wouldn't see him as often.
They were nomadic. They never owned a house. They would just constantly rent. That's what I recall. I think you testified to that. Is that right?
I wouldn't use the word nomadic, but they definitely moved more often than I did.
Okay. And approximately the date you first met Lori Vallow?
It would have been in 2008. I was driving with my then fiance at the time from Texas to Utah, and we went through Phoenix, and I met the Cox family at that time.
Oh,
Okay.
boy.
And would you agree with me that
He should have ran.
Lori Vallow and Alex Cox had a very, very close relationship?
It was on again, off again. There was times where it was very close, and there was times when they wouldn't see each other very often, but
Well-
they knew each other very well.
Well, are you aware that it seemed that every time Lori moved, Alex would follow her and move to where she would move to?
Not always. Yes, sometimes that did happen, but other times no.
More often than not, though.
It depended. There were times where Alex lived with in Arizona with us, and Lori left to Hawaii for a few years. But then there's other times I agree with you where
Right.
they all moved from Texas to Arizona together and things like that.
And on the subject of Hawaii, during the time that Lori left JJ with Charles for that 2-month period, and I believe that was January and February of 19, does that ring a bell?
Yeah, it might have gone into March a little bit too, but yeah, that time frame sounds right.
And during that time, are you aware that she was residing and staying in Hawaii?
I don't know where she lived at that time. I
Nomadic.
didn't have any contact with her.
Okay. And at the time you were married to her niece, so you guys didn't discuss Lori's whereabouts as being in Hawaii for 2.5 months.
Well, my wife said she didn't know where she was.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that was true. I just know that's what she said.
Okay.
So this poor guy was
Now,
actually shot at
would you
as
agree
well.
with me that Tylee and JJ had a very, very close relationship?
Yeah, I mean, they were brother and sister, so I would say they were close.
Well, more than that, isn't it true that for all practical purposes, Tylee was really like the second mother to JJ and caring for JJ?
It depended. I mean, she was a teenager, so there was definitely times where that wasn't the case. But there was also times where she was a nurturer for JJ. I mean, she loved him, but she was, like I said, she's a teenager, so that was not her primary responsibility for sure.
But did you observe JJ looking at that in maybe a different perspective, that he relied on Tylee for a lot of things and things that maybe Lori wasn't providing for him?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Did you observe anything to that effect?
And JJ was special needs, so I don't know that I could have identified that JJ could have. I mean, JJ needed every adult or anyone who was there to help him. You know, that's what he needed. And I definitely remember during that time when Charles had him, he missed his mom a lot. Charles brought it up in those same emails a lot,
So
and it broke your
sad.
heart.
And after Lori got back from Hawaii in March, early March, there was an attempt at reconciliation.
Yeah, they did try.
And at that point,
Hey,
did,
Jeff H.
Charles confide in you that he actually was convinced by Lori to make Lori the beneficiary of his life insurance policy again?
Charles didn't talk to me about his life insurance policy. Charles did not talk to me about his life insurance policy.
So he never discussed with you finances or anything like that?
We talked about financial stuff, but he never talked to me about his life insurance policy.
Okay. So you're not aware that the life insurance policy was placed in Lori Vallo's name during this reconciliation period then, correct?
I would have no ability to testify to that.
Okay. You brought up the subject of Melanie Gibb. And my recollection of your testimony is that you found it unusual that Melanie Gibb was there for Christmas of 2018.
Yes.
And I can't recall if you had said that they seemed to have a close bond at that point. How would you characterize their bond at that point?
Who's they?
Melanie Gibb and Lori Vallow.
Okay. Yeah, it seemed like they definitely had a closer bond.
And are you aware of when Melanie Gibb and Lori first met?
I can't testify to when they met.
Did your wife participate in these gatherings in August, September, and October with Melanie Gibb and Lori?
I believe so.
Yeah. And these gatherings in August, September, and October of 2018 were what you described as these fireside chats?
And I think they went past October. I think they were in November as well, in December.
But they started in the mid to early summer of that year. Is that right?
I can't say when Melanie's very first one was.
Okay. And were you aware that Melanie Gibb was the organizer and planner of all of these events?
I can't testify who planned them.
Okay. It wasn't your wife who was planning them?
I don't think so. It would have been without my knowledge.
Okay. And you found it unusual that Melanie was there at your Christmas holiday for what would be deemed a family holiday. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you happen to recall seeing a gentleman by the name of David Warwick at Christmas that year as well with Melanie?
No.
Okay. Now, you touched on a little bit about the temple, and I don't want to cover this too much, but in terms of the temples, what I don't understand is when someone goes to the temple in your faith, they do that as part of the marriage process in the beginning, right? To sort of the bond, it's a bonding, or you bond with each other, or I'm grasping for the word seal. You're sealing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the word?
There's a few things that you can do at the temple. You can go and do something called baptisms for the dead, where you can.
Well, I want to talk about. We'll get there in a
Baptisms for
minute.
the dead?
I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on that, but I'm as part of the marriage process. You seal with each other as part of the marriage process when a couple first gets married, right?
We have something where you can be sealed to your spouse for time and all eternity, is what we call it.
Okay. And regardless of what happens, you're sealed, even if it means divorce or otherwise, right?
No, not quite. But
Okay.
I mean, we make promises to God.
Okay.
And with those covenants, if you keep those, we believe He gave authority to the person who seals you to be able to stay married even after you die.
Right.
But obviously, with any covenant, if you don't keep your promises to God, then you can break that and it's no longer sealed.
Right. And that's something that's important in the LDS faith, is to keep your covenant to God, right?
would hope for most people, if they believe in God and they make a promise with him, that they would want to keep it.
So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but the sealing is also a process in which you, and I'm trying to be careful about the way I phrase this, so correct me if I'm wrong. You stand in for somebody else who has passed away or is no longer alive, and you baptize them as a proxy for them. Is that kind of what goes on there?
Sealing or baptizing? Because you said baptize.
Well, sealing. There's a sealing process about being a proxy for someone who's passed on, right?
Yeah. So if I can be sealed to my wife here living, and that's something that I want to do, then I have that option. And for those who passed on, we practice in proxy is what we call it, but we practice the process of doing that for them so that it could be done here on earth, so that if it's something that they wanted, they could have that option in heaven.
So when they pass on, you're helping them move on to heaven. Is that really what that's all about?
The process would be up to them to choose, right? But yes, we're going through the process here in behalf of them.
Well, you mentioned the baptism then, and that's what I'm a little confused about. So you baptize people who have passed on as well.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to beyond the scope of direct.
Overruled. So, Mr. Pryor, there needs to be some relevance as well. So it's
Okay.
narrow.
Well, Judge, I think I'm going to move on. This was more curiosity than was anything else. So
Okay, then
let's
it's
move on.
Not relevant if it's just curiosity. So
Yeah, let's move on then. As part of these fireside
Wait a minute.
issues,
Fireside issues. Wait, he said it was more curiosity. Like he got carried away in his own in his own questions. Oh man. Oh, Jess, I don't really do gummies. Or I mean, I've never done the chocolate, to be honest. Done it. That was funny as hell. Listen.
you don't get to choose that, right?
The church can occasionally come out, right? Like any organization, and say, hey, these are
serious?
things that don't apply to our faith.
So having visions, have you heard about people who are blessed with the ability to have divine visions and be able to see events that are occurring in the future?
I have never had any visions, and I don't know anybody who I personally believe that I know personally who's had a vision.
Okay. And then having seances, like conducting a seance, is that something that your wife was doing as part of this back starting in the summer of 2018? Is she engaging in seances?
I can't testify to that because I don't know.
Okay. Did she talk to you anything about conducting vibrations and having vibration movements as part of these seances?
She didn't
Nothing
talk
like
to me about
that?
that.
Not right now, man.
She said, we came home, we planted flowers on the side of the house.
And the discussion of light and dark, you talked a little bit about Chad Daybell and that there was some discussion about light and dark, right? But
Yes.
That's not necessarily inconsistent with your faith. Your faith is talks about it in a number of your publications about light spirits and dark spirits. Isn't that true?
We don't talk about light spirits and dark spirits. No.
No, there's nothing in the faith that talks about light or dark spirits, right?
Nothing in what I've been taught. I mean, it's a large faith. There's a lot of information. So
Okay, so you're just not aware of whether that's taught in your faith or not. Is that fair?
I've been going to my church for a really long time, and I've never experienced it.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay. That's it for Brandon. Oh man, that was funny as hell. It was more curiosity, and the judge is like, oh, well, if it's not relevant and it's just more curiosity, then let's move on. Oh, Judge Boyce. He's a sport. I gotta give him that. This next one is going to be more computer analysts, I believe. So we're gonna go right to John Pryor and his cross. Again, we are on day
Officer
9.
Couter,
It's Officer Couter. And this is day 9.
you made an initial report in regards to this case. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and the initial report was relatively brief.
Yes.
Recall that?
Yes, I do.
And then you made a subsequent report afterwards. Do you recall that as well?
Yes.
What's the time frame between the initial report and the subsequent report?
I don't recall exactly the time difference between them.
Okay.
I didn't look at that.
Was it a week?
No, I think it was further out, like maybe a month or so, 2 months. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, and then you also made some comments about not wearing a body cam on that day. Is that right?
Yes, I didn't have a body cam on me that day.
You were a patrol officer, is that right?
Oh,
Yes,
this.
I was.
Standard issue to have a body cam?
It was lost or it was broken.
Okay, this guy is a horrible witness. Just forewarning you, he's horrible. So he had body cam. He says it was lost, and then he's like, "Oh, I mean, it was broken." He's a horrible witness. Just check it out.
Broken and lost. So
When did you break it?
couldn't tell you exact date.
Did you try to replace it the same time you realized that it was broken, or did you wait a little while?
I informed my sergeant that it was broken.
Okay. And then you went on a call and you didn't have any body cam to actually accurately reflect what was transpiring that day, correct?
No, I didn't have body cam.
Okay. And Judge, could we utilize the HDMI?
You gonna publish something, Mr. Pryor?
I want to show the officer a copy of his report if at all possible.
He said, "Can I utilize the HDMI?" Judge, can I utilize the HDMI?
Was it a week?
No, I think it was further out, like maybe a month or so, 2 months. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. And then you also made some comments about not wearing a body cam on that day. Is that right?
Yes, I didn't have a body cam on me that day.
You were a patrol officer. Is that right?
Yes, I was.
Standard issue to have a body cam?
It was lost or it was broken and lost. So
When did you break it?
couldn't tell you exact date.
Did you try to replace it the same time you realized that it was broken, or did you wait a little while?
I informed my sergeant that it was broken.
Okay. And then you went on a call and you didn't have any body cam to actually accurately reflect what was transpiring that day, correct?
No, I didn't have body cam.
Okay. And Judge, could we utilize the HDMI?
You gonna publish something, Mr. Pryor?
I want to show the officer a copy of his report if at all possible.
Okay, are you gonna do that by giving him a copy or publishing it?
I'd like to publish it and have him look at it while I speak to him about it, if that's acceptable to the court.
From the defense, any objection to doing that?
No objection, Your Honor, so long as he admits it as an exhibit. I'm not sure he should be publishing things to the jury that aren't admitted.
Judge, I can do it the other way and ask the officer when he did his report, but he doesn't have a recollection of when he did the supplement, and there's 3 parts to this report. So my hope is that to show him the report, lay the proper foundation, and then I'll move to admit defense exhibit 89. But if the court prefers a different manner, we can go a different way.
Okay, well, it's up to you. We just can't publish it until it's been admitted. I agree, so that in case it's not admitted, the jury doesn't already see it.
Okay.
So however you want to handle that, and if the state doesn't object, then we can perhaps shortcut that.
And Judge, can I have my laptop approach the witness with a copy of my laptop, show him the reports, and have him authenticate the reports?
Yeah, perhaps maybe just ask Mr. Wixom and show him what you've got and see if the state is going to object. I think he's indicating maybe he's not.
Judge, we're not going to object to that approach at all.
So it's 89.
89, and the parts are A, B, and C, Judge.
All right. Well, if you just want to move for the admission, then
I'll move for admission then, Judge.
No objection.
all right. Defense exhibits 89, A, B, and C
Yes,
are
Judge.
admitted. And are they 3 separate reports, or what are the exhibits? If you just describe them for the record.
Judge, A would be the initial report, which is about a paragraph. B would be approximately a 2-paragraph report that was done, I believe, a couple months later. And C would be
Wait
just the
for it.
initial
He
incident report
changed
by
his
Officer
damn
Broussard,
report,
the face
guys.
page of the incident report.
He's a
Okay,
horrible
we'll just need to be able to
witness.
make sure to get those submitted into the record for evidence, but you may go ahead with those now admitted and publish, and we'll make sure the court receives copies so they can be given to the jurors for deliberation.
And Judge, whenever the clerk is ready to bring that up.
Yes, it can be published.
Now, do you recognize this report, officer?
Yes, I do.
And is that your report?
Yes, that is.
And that's a true and accurate reflection of what you prepared close in time to when the incident occurred. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So if you would do me a favor and read the very first sentence.
I was dispatched to a suspicious call of a male holding a paintball gun at a lady on 1900 East and 200 North.
Now, 1900 East and 200 North is Chad Daybell's property. Is that right?
Well, that's the intersection.
The intersection.
Yeah.
And Mr. Daybell's property is on the corner which would be the northwest corner. Does that sound right?
Northeast.
Northeast corner. I'm sorry, I got my east and west backwards. Okay. Now, when you first testified for the prosecution, your comment was in regards to a paintball or gun incident. And you made a point of adding the word gun after paintball.
Well, it's a paintball gun. So
So you knew
she
this was-
reported different things of possibly being at a gun or a paintball
When did she report that?
in her 911 calls.
Okay. Could we have a copy of exhibit regarding the 911 call, please?
Which one? There were 2.
Well, Judge, I think what I'm going to do is play actually both of them.
All right, those are exhibits 232A and 232B.
Streamlabs.
And Judge, I'm going to get through this before we start the 911 call. just right there is fine. Thank you, officer. So your recollection of the 911 call is that Miss Daybell said something about a gun as well?
Yeah, she just said gun as well in that call.
Okay. Okay. But the dispatcher said it's holding a paintball gun, correct?
I believe so.
And then it says that you attempted to locate suspect but couldn't find anyone in the area, right?
Correct.
You talked to her and she said she noticed a guy standing behind her and was holding a paintball gun again, right?
Yes, sir.
That's what your statement says, right?
Yes, sir.
So the dispatch was about a paintball gun. When you spoke to her, she said it was a paintball gun and then pulled the trigger a couple of times and then ran off and was described as 5'11", 190 pounds, right?
Scary.
Approximately, yes.
Okay. And then you didn't locate anybody, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then you, a couple of months later, your story, at least your report expanded a little bit. Would that be fair?
Yes, I was asked to put more detail into it.
This is
You were
where it
asked to
gets
put more
good.
detail into the report.
Yeah, just to be more brief about actually more detail on the report.
Who asked you to put more detail into the report?
I don't exactly remember who asked me. It was one of my supervisors.
So one of your supervisors said they needed to get more detail in the report.
Yeah, they just said be more specific.
Okay. And that was after the death of Tammy Daybell, right?
I believe so.
So this occurred on October 9th, correct?
Yes.
And Tammy Daybell died sometime shortly after that, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And then after you did your initial report, your supervisor came up to you and said, we don't have enough information in that initial report, so we need to add some more information, right?
Well, just more detail.
Okay.
Report.
Was this such a significant issue with a paintball gun that it required you to go back and then write a 2-3 page paragraph with more detail on it after the incident had occurred 60 days earlier?
Can you ask that again? Sorry.
Well, they put you up to putting more detail because they were trying to get you to allege that in some way there may have been a gun there. Isn't that what the police are trying to do here?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Sustained.
So you put in your report on October 9, 2019, 21:45 hours. You were talking to Tammy Daybell in front of her home, right?
Yeah, it should have been in her home.
Okay.
In front of
Front
her.
room of her home.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I listened to the 911 call and I seem to recall the 911 call coming in at 21:49. So you're not quite clear on the hours that you talked to Tammy, right?
Yeah, it might have been a different timestamp. I'm not sure.
Okay. So if the 911 call says 21:49, we can rely on that reasonably well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you put in your report that at 21:45, you were talking to her 4 minutes before she ever called in the 911, right?
If that's what it's saying, yeah. I guess.
Okay. Well, we'll go back and listen to the recording again in a minute here, but, and her son were sitting back with the room by the door. Okay. That I believe that led to the kitchen. They were sitting back in a room by a door.
Sitting at the back of the room by the door. They were standing there in the
Okay.
doorway.
Okay. And then you made mention of the fact, and when you revised your report a little bit, you mentioned that she was standing at the back of her car with a gun she believed to be a paintball gun. So you've added the word gun and said believed. So what you're really doing is she told you it was a paintball gun, right?
To my best knowledge, yeah.
And the 911 dispatcher said it was a paintball gun, right?
Yes, I believe so.
So why did you put that caveat in there saying believed to be a paintball gun? You knew it was a paintball gun. There was no gun there that day, was there?
Sustained.
Pryor says, yeah.
She said she screamed and her husband ran and son. So her husband and son took action. They ran out and they tried to see what was going on, correct?
I'm sorry, where are you at in the
Middle of the news statement, Tamara stated she screamed and called for her husband and son. Okay, right?
Yes.
And to your recollection, the husband and son went out and looked at the what was going on out there, correct?
As far as I'm aware, just Chad.
Okay. So from your perspective, it was unusual the way Chad acted because when his wife said someone shot a paintball gun at him, you think it's unusual for him to run out and see what's going on, right?
No, that's not what I said.
All right. But you did say it's unusual because he stood there silently while Tamara talked to you, right? That was unusual?
Yes, it was unusual that he didn't get involved in the.
Do you know anything about Mr. Daybell's personality?
I did not.
Do you know that he's somewhat of a shy person?
No, I did not.
Okay. Do you know that he's somewhat of a humble person?
Objection, Your Honor. The attorney is testifying.
Sustained.
Okay.
Mr. Pryor, also please let him finish his answers. The court reporter's getting stressed.
Okay. And then you modified your original statement because in your original statement, you said the shooter, according to Tammy, was about 5'10", 190 pounds. Where did you get the 6 feet tall and 200 pounds from?
I said approximately.
Okay. Well, why didn't you say what you put in your original report? Why did you add 2 inches and add extra weight on this person?
Good question.
It was 2 months later. I was going off my memory.
Okay. Or is it possible that when your supervisor said we need a greater report with more detail that seems to point the finger at Alex Cox, is that why you changed it?
Objection, argumentative, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You changed it because it didn't fit the scenario of Alex Cox, did it?
No, that's not why I changed it.
Okay. But you waited 2 months on a report before you decided to change that report, correct?
I didn't wait. I was asked to change it.
Okay. By your
Not change it, but to put more detail into it.
And I guess this more detail.
Did you hear him? He said, I was asked to change it. Horrible, horrible. In my opinion, horrible.
Yes.
And to your recollection, the husband and son went out and looked at the what was going on out there, correct?
As far as I'm aware, just Chad.
Okay.
Just Chad.
So from your perspective, it was unusual the way Chad acted because when his wife said someone shot a paintball gun at him, you think it's unusual for him to run out and see what's going on, right?
No, that's not what I said.
All right. But you did say it's unusual because he stood there silently while Tamara talked to you, right? That was unusual?
Yes, it was unusual that he didn't get involved in the.
Do you know anything about Mr. Daybell's personality?
I did not.
Do you know that he's somewhat of a shy person?
No, I did not.
Okay. Do you know that he's somewhat of a humble person?
Objection, Your Honor. The attorney is testifying.
Sustained.
Okay.
Mr. Pryor, also please let him finish his answers. The court reporter's getting stressed.
Okay.
Getting stressed.
And then you modified your original statement because in your original statement, you said the shooter, according to Tammy, was about 5'10", 190 pounds. Where did you get the 6 feet tall and 200 pounds from?
I said approximately.
Okay. Well, why didn't you say what you put in your original report? Why did you add 2 inches and add extra weight on this person?
It was 2 months later. I was going off my memory.
Okay. Or is it possible that when your supervisor said we need a greater report with more detail that seems to point the finger at Alex Cox, is that why you changed it?
Objection, argumentative, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You changed it because it didn't fit the scenario of Alex Cox, did it?
No, that's not why I changed it.
Okay. But you waited 2 months on a report before you decided to change that report, correct?
I didn't wait. I was asked to change it.
Okay. By your
Not change it, but to put more detail into it.
And I guess this more detail that you need of a paintball incident is a result of your supervisor needed more favorable information, didn't he?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
Ooh.
Your supervisor needed more favorable information to link this to Alex Cox, didn't he?
Not to my knowledge. No.
Okay. Not to your knowledge, right?
No.
Okay. And then you say Joseph Murray, who lived kitty corner from the property, right?
Yes, he lived kitty corner.
You went over to talk to Joseph Murray, right?
That's Emma's
Briefly, yes.
husband.
Okay. And Joseph Murray stated he was cutting wood, heard a scream, and he saw someone run around the north side of Tamara's property, right?
Yes.
Okay. Would it surprise you to learn that Joseph Murray may be telling you a different story than what you're telling this jury?
No.
Okay. That wouldn't surprise you, right?
No, it would surprise me. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. You know, did Joseph Murray hear a gunshot?
I don't know.
Well, did you
No.
bother to ask him if he heard a gunshot?
No. I
Well-
just asked him what he saw.
So according to your testimony and your report, Joseph Murray saw somebody running, and that's an important fact, isn't it?
I don't know.
Well, it's important enough that you had to change your report and add that into the report, right? So it must be an important fact.
I guess maybe so.
Okay. But wouldn't you think it'd also be an important fact if Joseph Murray had actually heard a gunshot of some kind?
I don't think you would have heard a gunshot if it was a paintball gun.
Exactly. Exactly. So this narrative that you're trying to suggest to this jury that this was a gun, you know it was a paintball gun, don't you?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
All the information that's been presented to you points that this was a paintball gun, doesn't it?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah. What information from the reports you gleaned at the time you investigated this suggests that this was not a paintball gun? Give me a couple of reasons why you don't think this was a paintball gun.
Just from the calls and what I've heard on the testimony from Tammy's call.
What? Her call said it was.
So from Tammy's call
Oh, he's going to play him now.
and from your report and the dispatcher saying it's a paintball gun, where did it say it was a rifle or an AK-47 or anything like that?
I never said it was.
Okay. So again, you know this was a paintball gun, don't you?
No, I don't.
All right. Judge, I'm going to replay the video if I can get it to work on my, excuse me, the 911 if I can get it to work.
All right, please clarify which of the two you're playing. And you may publish, but clarify which one.
232B will be first, Judge. Maybe not.
October 9, 2019, 21 hours, 49 minutes, 20 seconds.
Fremont County Sheriff's Office. Hi, I need to report something. Okay, go ahead. What's the address? Okay, at 202 North, 1900 East, the corner with the blinking yellow light on Salem Highway. Is it a suspicious person? Yes. Okay, what was he wearing? He was all dressed in black and he had a ski mask on. And he's at the blinking light now is where you saw him? No, he's gone now because I pulled up into our driveway and I was getting stuff out of the backseat of my car and suddenly he was there and he had a paintball gun and he was and he was going to shoot at me. And I kept asking him what he was doing so I could tell it was a paintball thing. And then he just kept doing it. So I yelled for my husband and then he took off running around the back of my house. Okay, give me just 1 minute. Stay on the line with me. Okay.
October 9, 2019, 21 hours, 50 minutes, 28 seconds.
And that was North 1900 East?
We can stop.
Yes. Okay.
And Judge, I'm done with the, so I was listening pretty carefully. I heard the word paintball gun and I heard the word paintball thing. Would you tell me on that tape where the word gun was used?
Later on.
Later on?
Mhm.
Oh, are you telling me there's more evidence here?
Of that recording, yes.
Where's that?
More further on in that recording, she talks more.
She talks, I didn't hear that. I heard it stop.
That's because you stopped it.
So there was mention of a gun. Is that right?
I believe so.
You believe so?
Yeah.
And when you first listened to this, you heard the words paintball gun, right?
In her initial statements, yes.
You heard the words paintball thing, right?
Yes.
And the dispatch said that it was a paintball gun incident, correct?
Paintball.
That's what
thing.
she put in her notes, yes.
Hey,
And in your
Wiggly.
initial report, you said that it was a paintball gun incident, right?
Yes.
And then 2 months later, after Tammy Daybell dies and you talk to your supervisor and you don't know why he asked you to change it, you changed it and now you're talking about possibly it being a gun, right?
Objection, Your Honor, that misstates the evidence.
Sustained.
Well, the subsequent report then starts hinting at, well, maybe this was a gun, right?
No, it's
Okay.
still a paintball gun.
Okay. All right. Just so we're clear. Now, were you part of the other investigation that looked at some of the other possibilities of why someone on the property would be out there roaming around? Did you talk to any of the other potential suspects in this thing?
No, I
this
didn't talk to
thing.
anybody about Tammy.
Okay. Who was the other officer with you?
Deputy Simper.
Okay.
Deputy Simper.
Did you go down and talk to one of the neighbors about the husband of a dog kidnapper that had been causing some problems down the
What?
street, just right down the street?
Not that I can recall.
What about the
Dog?
autistic child that was roaming the neighborhood, causing some issues within the neighborhood? Did you talk to that person as well?
Not that I can recall.
Okay. But you agree with me finally now that this was a paintball gun incident, right?
Like I says, I don't know if it was a paintball or a gun.
Okay. All right, Judge, that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Wixom, redirect.
Yeah, Your Honor.
Yes.
Let me clean up this
Thank you.
mess, Your Honor.
Deputy Cannon, you were just asked on cross-examination a number of questions about having written this second report.
Yes.
So in reference to those questions, how long after this incident was it that you wrote the second report?
Like I said, I'm not 100% sure, maybe a couple months or so.
Is it fair to say that over the course of a couple of months, you have a number of calls and interactions with the public as part of your job?
Absolutely.
And as part of law enforcement, as a deputy, is it expected that you will conform to your superiors?
Absolutely.
So if a superior officer says, please go write another report, is that something that you would do?
Yes.
But in this case, is that what you did?
Yes.
Is there any question in this case, were you fed information to put in the report?
No, just more information about what happened.
But the information that you included in the report all came from your memory. Is that fair?
Yes.
You were asked some questions about whether or not you were wearing a body cam at the time.
Yes, I was asked that.
I think you explained that at the time yours was broken.
Correct.
Can you state, is it fair to say that at Fremont County Sheriff's Office, is there any kind of policy requirement that you wear a body cam for anything?
No,
And so why do you normally wear a body cam?
just for my recollection and safety and different things like that.
But that doesn't mean you can't perform your duties without the body cam.
No, it doesn't mean that.
And what else do you do when you have an incident besides recording it on your body cam? What else do you do as law enforcement to memorialize what happened in that incident?
I don't understand. Sorry.
Why do you write police reports?
Oh, so you can remember what happened?
I don't remember.
And when you do that, do you write these reports to the best of your recollection?
Yes.
Next witness.
Defense counsel pointed out that in one report,
Hey,
in the second
Austin.
report, you had noted the time that you were talking to Tammy as being 21:45. Do you remember that?
Yes.
But yet we heard in the call that her call came in at 21:49.
Yes.
Can you explain that discrepancy?
It was probably, I was dispatched at that time at 21:45 and she had called briefly thereafter
And again, when you were
when I was
right,
responding. Sorry.
finish, I'm sorry.
Or when I was responding to the call, she probably made that phone call.
When you were writing that second report, were you writing it from memory?
Yeah, it's just from my memory.
Is it possible that the 4-minute difference could have just been a function of your memory?
Absolutely.
And to be clear, you did use the word paintball gun in your report, correct?
Yes.
But yet on direct, you indicated that you were looking for shell casings.
Correct.
What made you look for shell casings?
Judge, exceeding the scope of cross.
I'll sustain that.
Was there anything about the information that you received when you initially investigated that would cause you to rule out the possibility that it could have been a real gun?
Sorry, say that again.
Was there anything about the information that you had when you first responded that would have required you to rule out that it could have been a real gun?
No, it's just she heard 2 pops and she screamed and
Heard
So-
2 pops.
So as you sit there today, from the information you have, can you rule out that whatever she saw was not a real gun?
no, you can't.
You were asked a question about whether or not Joe Murray had said if he had heard a gunshot. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
Why didn't you ask Joe if he'd heard a gunshot?
I guess it just didn't cross my mind. It didn't seem important at the time.
Did Joe bring up to you in the conversation that he heard a gunshot?
No.
Is that something that you might have assumed he would bring up?
Possibly, or if he saw a gun or something.
So this lady's calling in saying that she got shot at, or, they tried to shoot her or whatever. And she doesn't ask the guy that was outside that saw the man run around the house if he heard a gunshot. What a Nimrod.
Just the last question, to be clear. In the second report, did you include any information in there that had been provided to you by anybody else?
No, just from my memory.
Thank you. You're all right. No further questions.
Oh, I know they
That'll
look like
conclude the
twins.
Testimony then of Deputy Cannon.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Is the state or defense intending to recall this witness?
Judge, I subpoenaed Deputy Cannon, but I'm going to relieve him of his subpoena today so that he will.
Okay, he's let loose. Excuse me. I think.
Recognize that she did have some pink foam coming up.
Okay, this is going to be the coroner, and we are going to go right across. Pryor he goes raw on this coroner. This is the coroner / medical examiner who signed Tammy Daybell's death certificate. And she's so soft-spoken and meek, and Pryor just kind of tears in. Here we go.
All right, cross-examination, Mr. Pryor.
Thank you, Judge.
Look at Chad's holding his chin. Another horrible witness for the state, in my opinion. Come on, Pry Guy. Hi, Melanie. Welcome in. Welcome in, everybody who's just joining. Welcome to your Daybell highlights. Day 9. We are on day 9, the end of day
Officer
9.
Greeno,
Bye, Michael.
you prepared a report in regards to this incident. Is that right?
Yes.
And at the bottom of your report, you made mention that the coroner determined an autopsy was not necessary unless the family wanted one, which they did not.
Correct.
So from what I read from your report was that you discussed the option of whether an autopsy would be performed, and the coroner determined that it wasn't necessary. And then subsequent to that, the family decided they did not want an autopsy. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, I also noted, did you have a chance to talk to Brenda Dye and Deputy Coroner Wilmore about this case in detail?
At the scene, I did, yes.
Okay, did you discuss the fact that there were some old bruises on Tammy's arms?
Yes.
And that, were you aware that Coroner Dye made note of that they were old, from some time before this incident, bruises on both of her arms as well, correct? She just testified to it, Judge.
Overruled.
The fact that Miss Dye noted in her coroner's report that there were old bruises on her arms, correct?
I wasn't aware if she knew the age of them,
Okay, but you are aware that there was a discussion with you folks about the fact that there were some old bruises on Tammy's body, correct?
that there were bruises, correct.
You were also aware that when you looked for the medication, you saw the it's Prozac, right? Fluoxetine?
I'm not sure what the generic is.
Okay. Acetaminophen, right? Some ibuprofen.
Correct.
The flu.
Vitality extracts, which are, like non-traditional medication, correct?
Correct. And like essential oils.
Like essential oils that she would use. And then Chad talked to you a little bit about the fact that she was experimenting with essential oils as well, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then some extra strength acetaminophen. There was also some cough medicine that was found there as well, correct?
Yes.
And that's important because when Chad first spoke with you, he said that she was having coughing fits, right?
He did.
And you were able to confirm the fact that there was cough medicine as part of the medicine that was at the table at least at that evening, correct?
Correct.
You weren't able to tell whether she took it or not that night, but clearly on her side of her bed, there was cough medicine, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then again, some essential oil. What is essential oil respiratory blend? I don't understand what respiratory blend means when it
Such an
applies
ass.
to essential oils.
That's what the bottle was labeled.
Did you happen to look into what that's for?
I did not.
Well, the word respiratory implies to me that it has something to do with breathing. You didn't look any further than just noting that it was it was some respiratory essential oil.
Correct.
Hey,
Okay.
green-eyed.
And then below that one, you put note that there was also a supplement for bruising and sore muscles.
Yes.
So she was taking supplements for some bruising that she must have been experiencing and sore muscles, right?
I assume so.
Okay. Well, those are the ones that the family showed you that she was taking regularly, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, again, I'll go back to what he initially told you that she got up at about midnight, right?
Correct.
Military time always confuses me. So 0000, right?
Yes. That's midnight.
And then at approximately 5:40, he felt the bed and she slid off the bed. And that's when he realized that she had passed, right?
Yes. That's what he told me.
Okay. And he was pretty shook up about this, wasn't he?
Yes.
Far more shook up than anybody else in the house, right?
Yes.
He was more disturbed about this than his daughter, who eventually showed up, right?
I didn't see or observe his daughter after he showed up.
He was far more despondent than his son, who was there as well, right?
Correct.
Okay. And what you observed in terms of the mattress, in terms of the position of the mattress, was consistent with what Chad told you in terms of why the mattress was moved. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So there's nothing unusual about the mattress, nothing there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And as far as medical conditions, again, while he was discussing with you, he was pretty despondent, pretty upset, right?
Yes.
Okay. And as while he was trying to talk to you, he made something that she had taken some steroid shots for some sore muscles, that she had fallen a few months ago in the driveway and injured her arm. Did he happen to mention to you that she was having incidents of falling, unexplained falls that she was making?
Not that I remember.
Don't remember that? You didn't have a body cam on either, though, did you?
I did not.
You didn't have a recorder with you either, right?
No.
and you were going to an unattended death, are you issued a body cam?
I was.
Are you issued a recorder?
No,
Okay, so you are issued a body cam, it wasn't available, or was that one broken too?
I believe it was charging at the time.
Okay, all right. And then he mentioned that she had been feeling sick, had a cold, and that she had low blood pressure, and that she'd been fainting occasionally.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did he ever mention to you the fact that Tammy Daybell suffered from anemia?
Not that I recall.
Okay. When you looked at the pink foaming, did you happen to do some research on what causes that pink foaming?
I did not.
Okay, so you're not aware of the medical condition someone would have that would cause their mouth to foam at the mouth, right?
I'm not.
Okay. At the time you showed up, there were no bruising on the neck or the arms, like recent bruising. Is that correct?
Correct.
And there was no indication of a struggle, correct?
Correct.
And there was nothing in the position of the pillows or the sheets or anything in the bedroom that would indicate there was any sort of a fight, struggle, or altercation within that bedroom. Is that right?
Correct.
And then he also told you, Chad told you that through the coroner that Tammy had an occasion to have minor shaking fits, right?
He did say that to the coroner, not to me though.
With seizures, right?
I'm not 100% certain what he said.
And then were you there to talk to the daughter, Emma?
No.
But you put in your report that Emma mentioned that her and her mother were trying to do that clogging thing, and that her mother had been slowing down the last couple of months. You're aware of that as well, right?
Dude, they bring in her Zumba coach too.
So the mother or the daughter, Emma, had confirmed that her mother had been slowing down and wasn't as active as she had been previously, right?
Not to me.
Okay. But Chad did talk to you about significant fainting, seizures, a number of maladies, right?
He had mentioned fainting. He didn't mention seizures to me though.
You're the airplane.
Chad told the coroner that sometimes Tamara had minor shaking fits consistent with seizure activity.
That was with the coroner.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know, Green Eyed. I'm wondering.
Okay. So at this point, after this was done, the determination made that it was not a homicide or any foul play as a result of this, correct?
I'm not sure exactly what the determination was that was made by the coroner.
Okay, and we'll get to that with the coroner. But from your pictures and your assessment, it didn't appear that there was any foul play from the pictures that you took. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Judge, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Any redirect?
Just a few, Your Honor, a few questions.
Very well.
Okay, they redirect, and now we are going to, let's see, I think he goes back up. Oh, no, they go up and have a sidebar. That's right. They ask if they're going to call her back, and then they have a sidebar, and then they ended the day. So now we're going to move into day 10, you guys. We are rocking and rolling. We are in day 10. And we have on the stand I think an officer. I think she's an officer, but don't quote me. Hold on, we'll find out.
Did information related to those names also impact your decision to amend the death certificate?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
This might be the actual coroner. All right, here they switch right now.
Bailiff, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. The FBI.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
And
Here we go.
Judge, before we start, I have exhibit 19 and 20. If I could provide those to the bailiff to have those marked. My understanding is 19 and 20 are admitted by way of stipulation of the parties.
EXHIVITY.
And what are those, Mr. Pryor?
Those are a death. 20 is a death certificate. 19 are pictures. And Judge, we'll have a sidebar prior to going forward with the pictures, if that's acceptable.
All right, how many pictures have you got in?
It's going to be one. There are a number of pictures, A through I think K, but specifically it's going to be F that I think I'm going to be looking at. But I request a sidebar before we go down that road, Judge.
Okay.
Your Honor, for my benefit, could I just ask counsel to refresh me what these photos are of the Tammy's death scene?
Correct.
Thank you.
And Judge, there may be some overlap with what the state had admitted as well previously. So.
Sounds like we have a defense exhibit 20 that's already been admitted.
They may already be on there.
Okay, so the death certificate exhibit 20 has previously been admitted.
I didn't have a recollection of that, Judge. My notes didn't reflect that. I apologize.
All right, thank you. So you can, yeah, if you can start there, and when we get to the pictures, if we have exhibits not yet admitted, we'll take those up in turn.
It's cut his mind.
And Judge, whenever you're, I can go forward.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. Thank you. So, and how would you like me to address you? Miss Dye or Coroner Dye? Miss Dye is okay? Okay. Miss Dye, you had an occasion to discuss this case with the FBI. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And that discussion took place at the Rexburg Police Department?
Yes.
Okay. And as part of that discussion with the FBI, you had mentioned that you had worked for EMS for 20 years.
Yes.
That you were an EMT for 5 years and an advanced EMT for 15. Is that still accurate?
That was in 2019. So
You have even more experience now.
I have more experience now. Yes.
Right. So when you're talking about an EMT and an advanced EMT is someone who is qualified to give medication. Is that right?
Certain medication. Yes.
And there's also additional training as well, identifying medical emergencies. But in addition, there's also some training as it relates to death scene investigation. Is there not?
Yes.
And for 20 years, you had experience doing that, right?
My main concern as an EMT is to save lives.
I understand that, but if the life can't be saved, you're still as an EMT for 20 years, given a significant amount of training about the death scene investigation, are you not?
If we can't save the patient before I was coroner, then no, I didn't. We would leave the scene.
Okay. Now, when you spoke with the FBI, your testimony with prosecuting attorneys, you said something about taking a 2-day seminar. Is that right? Some sort of 2-day training?
In Boise, yes.
And then you said there was some other classes or some other issues, right? that you took?
There's a week-long conference, and it's about 4 days, but it's a week long in Las Vegas, Nevada.
And that's what I was
year.
curious about, because you mentioned something about something else, but when you talked to the FBI, you described it as a week-long conference with the FBI as part of your training, right?
Right.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And what areas did that cover as part of that week-long conference?
Causes of death, times of death. It covers a wide variety.
It's an extensive course.
Yes, it was my first time attending too.
And is it required as part of being a coroner? Isn't that one of the requirements that you have to go through that training in order to be either elected or appointed as a coroner of a county?
Yes.
And you have to get this extensive training because we're not dealing with a minor issue. We're dealing with making a significant determination of the cause of death of somebody, aren't we? Ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. And are you familiar with Title 19, Chapter 43 of the Idaho Code?
I don't recall.
Judge, would there be something that could refresh your recollection if I showed you something?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, if you wouldn't be so kind as just read that. I'm not having a mark. Just read that. You can read that. Take the time to read that. And then when you're done, hand it back to the bailiff and then we'll talk a little bit about it.
What statute are you having her review, Mr. Pryor?
1943.
And no white noise, right, Mary?
Would like I could provide it to the court.
Fine, I have it.
The white noise was the worst in that trial. This actually isn't bad. Once they learned to turn their mics on, it was golden. Look at Chud. What's up, Diana? Those rotten kids. How dare they demand your attention? Don't even say white noise. I know no one even enjoys it anymore.
Now you've read Title 19, Chapter 43 of 01 of the Idaho Code. Is that
Objection, Your Honor.
Grounds?
Your Honor, this witness is not qualified to give any, she has no legal expertise to be interpreting statutes for the jury.
Well, if it calls for a legal conclusion, I'll sustain it, but I don't know what the question is yet, so overruled for now.
Now, ma'am, did you have an occasion to read that as part of your responsibilities of becoming a coroner?
When I first took over as coroner, yes.
Right. So you're aware that your primary job as a coroner under this particular legal statute of the law is when a county coroner is informed that
Objection, Your Honor. This is calling for a legal conclusion.
it's not, Judge.
Overruled.
When a county coroner is informed that a person has died, the county coroner shall investigate the death. You read that first line, right? You're aware of that, right?
Yes.
You are under legal obligation under the law as part of your position to investigate any death, correct?
Yes.
And if that death was suspicious or unknown circumstances, that's sub B, or the death occurred as a result of violence, whether by homicide, suicide, accident, you are required to investigate, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then as a result, if you determine that there's an issue, you can require an inquest to be conducted, which is basically like a jury trial, right? You understand that?
Yes.
Okay. And you are also to notify the police if you have any, before even doing an inquest, if you have any concerns under the statute that there's anything suspicious or out of the ordinary, you are to notify the police department and ask them to conduct an investigation. You understand that as well?
Yes, and we did have an officer on scene that helped investigate this. And we have an officer respond to every death call that helps investigate.
And I appreciate that, ma'am.
In other words,
to the prosecutor, you talked about, well, the lapidity caused me some concern. Remember you said that about lapidity, that was a concern of yours, and your questions weren't answered, right? Well, at the time of the scene there, you said, you noticed lapidity in the body.
Lapidity?
That Tammy Daybell apparently had died on her back, right?
Does he say?
Okay. Was that of a concern of yours at the time that would cause you to say, maybe I ought to take a step back before I sign this death certificate?
At that time, no.
Okay, but you were fully aware of the lapidity that you're claiming had occurred at that point. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. There were no fresh bruises on Tammy Daybell's body anywhere, were there?
On her arm, yes.
Those were fresh bruises?
I don't know. I'm not qualified to.
Well, you did
take that.
you did a report in that regard, did you not?
I did, and it looked like an old bruise to me. And with
we'll get to that.
Okay.
So when you filled out your medical report, you specifically not only identified that she had bruises on her arm, you actually used the word old bruises. Do you remember that?
yes, I did.
Okay. And these were not fresh or red or irritated or anything like that, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. The witness has already indicated she's not qualified to determine that.
Well, based on our observations all over.
These weren't fresh bruises, were they, on her arms? These were old bruises, just like what your report says, correct?
I can't answer that.
Okay. But you
Just
will
based on
answer
my
that on your report,
observations.
when you decided to fill out a report relating to this case, that report said old bruises. When the picture of the body, you wrote on the arms, old bruises on the arms, right?
Yes.
He is, Austin.
No other bruises on her body anywhere else, right?
No.
Nothing else that would deem to be suspicious on her body, correct?
Hey, Jane.
No.
And in fact, there was no indication of any trauma to the neck that you could observe, right?
No.
There were no scratch marks on her hands that would indicate any kind of a struggle, correct?
No.
There was no irritation on her ears or her face or her head that would give you any indication that there was any kind of a struggle. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. When you arrived, Chad Daybell was distraught, wasn't he?
Yes.
Sobbing.
Yes.
And you noted that it was his son that was not upset. His son was, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would you say his son was reserved?
His son
Quiet.
pointing fingers
And in
there.
the FBI report, you mentioned that you think that maybe his son was in shock. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And it's still your assessment at this point that at the time you felt that his son Garth was in shock. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
She's
You went over
about
to the
to
nightstand,
cry.
and on Tammy's side of the bed, you found the essential oils, right?
The book.
The what?
The book
The book.
of essential oils of natural.
Did you see any? I would represent you that Officer Greenall testified that she found a number of items in the bedroom, and you also saw cough medicine on Tammy's side. Is that right?
I don't recall the cough medicine being in the bedroom.
Okay. What about the medication for strike? What about the medication for bruises that she had that was in the bedroom as well? Do you recall that?
No.
Okay. But if Officer Greenall was there, right?
Yes. she
And
was.
detailed that in her report, correct? Correct?
I don't recall.
Okay. Would it help you to review Officer Greenall's report?
Yes.
Judge, if I could just have a moment.
You may.
He's getting intense.
And Judge, I think while I'm waiting for this to load, I'll continue with some questions so we don't waste any time. If it loads. So back to, I think where we left off is that Garth was, in your opinion, was in shock at the death of his mother, correct?
Back to Garth.
And Chad Daybell throughout this episode of being there with Tammy, for the most part, was sobbing and was highly emotional almost the entire time. Is that fair?
Yes.
There was no instance where you saw that he was faking it or trying to pretend to be upset. This was a genuine situation where you truly believed he was upset about the death of his wife. Is that right?
Objection, speculation, Your Honor.
Overruled.
You can answer.
Yes.
Now, I appreciate you talking about it, and you mentioned it in the report, that at no time did the family ever try to prevent you from doing an autopsy in this case. Is that right?
Emma stated she didn't want one done, but
Okay.
it's my choice. Ultimately, my
Right.
choice. Yes.
Emma didn't want one done because she didn't want her mother cut up, right?
This
Correct,
is
yes.
She
horrible.
didn't want her mother subjected to she didn't want her mother treated that way as part of the examination. Is that what her primary and only concern was?
Yes.
Okay. And yet Chad was indifferent one way or the other. He didn't tell you one way or the other whether he wanted one or didn't want one. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And ultimately, it's not the family's decision whether this occurs. It's your decision whether this occurs. Is that right?
Yes.
And based on the facts as you saw them, you saw some old bruises that you identified in your report, right? Correct?
Bruises?
There were no other indications of a struggle or a fight as it related to Tammy Daybell's body. Is that right?
No, not that I noticed, no.
Okay. No other indication right up to the time you dropped her off at the morgue that there was any problem with Tammy's body in any way, correct?
Explain problem.
Well, you didn't see anything as part of the when you arrived to the time that you loaded her up and took her off to the morgue. There was never anything during that process that would indicate there was anything wrong with Tammy Daybell's body, right?
I don't know what you're asking me.
Okay.
I can't answer that question.
Okay, how about this? There's nothing suspicious that you noted other than the lipidity and the old bruises that you put in your medical report, correct?
Correct.
He's got a point. He's got a point.
Judge, at this point, I've got the report of his Officer Green now. With the court's permission, I could give it to the bailiff. He could take it to her and she could scroll through. I think that would protect, in terms of being able to refresh your recollection about the report, if that's acceptable to the court.
All right, I'll let the prosecutor take a look at that first before it goes to the witness to make sure it's appropriately identified.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah. The judge is like, yeah, I'm going to double check your shit prior. You never know what he's going to sneak in there.
Mr. Pryor, we've got that report also admitted as an exhibit, if that's easier.
Maybe I missed it, but I didn't have that marked down. And if the court wants to, I don't, either way, Judge, we can.
I'd prefer the exhibit to your computer.
All right.
Can we utilize the
Exhibit 418.
HDMI?
It doesn't work that way. I'm an idiot when it comes to electronics. Oh, thank you. And ma'am, after you've had a chance to review that, would you look up and then just hand that back to the bailiff?
Lipidity. He says everything wrong, though.
Your Honor, while the witness is reviewing, may we have a quick sidebar?
Oh, Lord.
Well, let's have the witness finish the review and then we'll have a quick sidebar.
Pryor stops. Did you see him? That was funny.
The whole thing, I think the whole thing is. There's like 4 pages there in the whole thing. So. Yeah, oh no, that's okay. We can just correct that. I don't have a problem with that. And if you want stipulation, you want to read over
This is how long it takes the shit to warm
just
up.
Up and down thing and you can start.
The elbow? Yeah, the elbow. Yeah, he means lividity, not he's saying lipidity. It's funny.
Okay, in her...
Back to the bailiff. And Judge, for counsel, may I have a look at that, Mr. Bailiff, please?
Yeah, and that's exhibit 418 that counsel's reviewing.
You're right. Judge, we may have to have a sidebar just very briefly. Would that be possible?
Yes, that's fine.
Want to look at the rest of it?
Oh, do. I really need to get the Jeopardy song, but I'll get struck. But we need it for these sidebars. Let's see. We can do this one. Wow. Oh, Chad's about to flip open that laptop. This is at 2 times speed, too.
What you are witnessing is real. The participants are not actors.
Flip it, Chad. Flip it. Look at his chin. Wave your chin in the air like you just don't care. You put your chin in, you put your chin out, you put your chin in, and then you shake it all about. Oh my God. I'm losing my mind. 8:30 at night. This is when I start to get a little corny. This is why I typically don't do nighttime lives. Hell, maybe I should do more of them. Oh, y'all. So tomorrow's Friday. We are $13 shy of spinning that wheel tomorrow during our live at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are live every Monday and Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, no matter what. No matter what's going on. Even if it's just to sit here and puff, puff, pass, like Jessica said. Like Jessica said. My grandbaby is having a rough night last night. They're transitioning to, her big bed. Wow, this is a long ass sidebar. I almost even forgot we were watching this. They take a break for the love. For the love. All right, so we are back. Here we go. Chad's chin had lunch. Like a hamster. Happy to have you here, Lacey. I'm glad you got to join too. We haven't done this one in a while.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, we're back on the record. CR 2221-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Daybell. Completed our morning break. Maybe to help move things forward here, Mr. Pryor, I'll note that we have now Defendant's Exhibit 19, which is the entire report of Officer Greenhalgh, including attached photographs. And I believe that's been offered and will be admitted by stipulation. Is that your understanding?
It is, Judge. That's 19. Is that right, Judge?
Yes. Mr. Wixon from the state stipulate to the admission of Exhibit 19, which is the entire report, including statements and photographs.
We do, Your Honor.
Okay, that'll be admitted then as a single exhibit. And you can proceed with your continuing cross, Mr. Pryor.
Now, Ms. Dye, as part of
Miss
your activities on the scene of Miss Daybell's death, you eventually went back and did a chart or a report as it related to this case. Do you recall that? Part of that is to do a body chart and identify things of significance on that body chart. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and you in fact did that. Did you recall that?
Yes.
If I were to provide you with a copy of the chart, would you recognize that chart if I could have the bailiff approach the witness?
Jesus, I got to slow his ass down.
Thank you, sir.
Hold on. Whoa, that was way too quick. Hold on. I had it on 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I showed it to you. Okay.
What's up, Lolo?
And
It's
do you
good to
recognize
have
those
you.
documents? Are those the documents that you prepared after your examination of Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
And the date of those are 10/20 of 14. Is that right?
Yes, that's the date the report was completed.
And those are true and accurate copies of what you prepared as a result of your examination of Tammy Daybell on the date of her death. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, Judge, I'm going to move for admission of defendant's exhibit, and I would like it to be marked E and F, Judge. I think it's consistent with A, B, and C.
E and F.
E and F, 89 E and F.
89 E and F.
Yes, Judge. And I think that was how it was previously disclosed to the state on my exhibits.
Any objection to exhibits 89 E and F?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Defense exhibits 89 E and 89 F are admitted. And again, 2 separate exhibits there, Mr. Pryor. It's a body chart and then
2 body charts, Judge.
2 body charts. Thank
You
you.
want to have that marked now, Judge, or how do you want to handle that? I'll grab it. I'll grab it.
I'll have the clerk mark that actually, so we keep it straight.
You're getting your biology today. Sorry. You're walking today.
Yeah. So to be clear then, Ms. Pryor, the top, there's 2 pages here. The top page you gave me will be E and the bottom page will be F.
Thank you,
Okay.
darling. Darwin. So generous of you. Thank you so much. Darwin coming in hot with her first super sticker on the channel.
Now,
Oh,
ma'am, you've
yeah.
had a may I proceed, Judge? You've had a chance to look at what's been marked exhibit 89E and 89F. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
Oh,
based on the
fifth.
time that you spent
Sorry.
at Mr. Daybell's residence
Fifth.
observing Tammy, this is a true and accurate reflection of what you observed on that day, correct?
Correct.
And there, at this point, there's no changes that you would make or anything that you would modify in regards to this, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Judge, can I publish this?
Yes. There's a light on that device, Mr. Pryor, that'll help with the shadow.
They have a real projector, guys.
Thank you.
like we had in school.
So on your, and let me know when you're ready, ma'am.
Yeah, go ahead.
On your left,
She's wiping
when
her
you're looking at the
nose.
screen, and it's
Let me show you the
face down
exhibity.
figure.
And look at
Up on the
Chad
arm, we have a term. What is that
paying
term?
attention to the body.
Lividity?
And blood had gathered there. Is that right? That's what that means?
Yes.
Okay. And then a little further to the right on the same figure, there's another word that, what is that word?
Lividity?
And then to the left again on the same figure down near the lower part of the back, there's another word.
Lividity?
And then down on the legs, there's another term. What's that term?
Lividity?
So from what I gather from this, there was lividity on her entire body. Would that be fair?
Boom.
Yes.
Okay. So we weren't able with lividity, you aren't able to really make a determination other than the fact that she was laying flat at some point, right?
Yes.
Or she was laying on her front, one way or the other, right?
On her back.
Okay. So in your report, when you discussed this with the FBI, you had, based on all of your experience, you had said that the body had been dead for about 5 to 6 hours. Do you recall telling the FBI that?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. Well, you said 5 to 6 hours. So that's what you testified to the FBI. Is that incorrect?
No.
Okay. So I guess the question is that Mr. Daybell mentioned that he was awoken by the fact that Tammy had slipped out of the bed when he pulled the covers. You recall that?
Yes.
And Tammy had fallen down and her head was on the floor and her leg was up on the bed. You recall that?
That's what I was told, yes.
Okay. So if Tammy had died in the bed and had passed away in the bed, this lividity would be consistent with her dying in bed on her back, right?
Yes.
And if she fell down, and that's what woke Mr. Daybell up, there wouldn't be lividity up in her head, would there?
No.
So when Mr. Daybell told you that he was awoken when he pulled the covers, rolled over, and Tammy slid off the bed, well, that's consistent with the lividity here. She was in bed. She died in bed, and when he pulled the cover, she slid off. So wouldn't his story be consistent with the lividity findings that she actually was in bed?
Thank you,
for 5 or 6
Melissa
hours?
C.
Yes.
Thank
Okay,
you,
thank
Missy.
Now I want to go over to the other side, and the one that's facing. And on that particular one, it says something about tinged foam. Could you read that for me?
Blood tinged foam.
Okay, and that's what you observed on her body and we saw the pictures of the blood tinged foam in her mouth, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then further down on what would be her right arm, you put two words there. And what are those words?
Old bruising. Old bruising.
Okay, so old bruising. Now, you didn't put new bruising, did you?
No.
You didn't put any marks on anywhere else on her body, right?
No.
And as part of your investigation, you by statute are required to do a thorough investigation of the body. Is that right?
Yes.
And you did that day, didn't you?
Yes.
And what you came up with is that she had some foam in her mouth and there were some old bruises on her right arm. That's what you came up with, right?
Yes.
And you came up with nothing else on her body that showed any indication of any other trauma, marks?
No.
We can take that one down. I'm done with that.
I'm done with
But
that.
This
he
time,
says.
I'm going to want to publish.
He's so
defense ex-
sassy.
Like it's Defense Exhibit 19, I believe.
All right.
Alex Cox.
19F, Judge. I'm sorry.
Alex Cox also had
And
pink
Judge, this is the one
foam
where we.
coming out of his
Counsel.
mouth.
Sorry.
What's he doing?
This is just. Mr. Bailiff, would. Do we already have it?
Yes, our goal is met. Thank you so much, you guys. We're going to spin the wheel of Friday tomorrow. We have some really good giveaways. You guys are
All right, again, Mr. Pryor, the way
awesome.
we're admitting and have admitted Exhibit 19 is just a single exhibit. So you can reference photographs contained within 19. They're not going to be given separate designations. So 19F is not going to be an exhibit. So you'll have to refer to it by, I guess, page number.
Exhibity.
Because that's the way it came in as one document. We're not going to have the sub-documents in 19. It's just one exhibit.
And Judge, unfortunately, there are not page numbers on these.
Okay, well, if you,
I can identify it as.
you can describe it or count through the pages, but it's one single exhibit.
And Judge, this page number is a photo of Tammy Daybell's right arm.
Okay, so just really quick about Alex Cox. When you listen to the 911 call of Zulema's son calling in, he actually describes that there is pink foam coming out of Alex's mouth. So it sounds like they kind of died in the same kind of way. Ooh, creepy.
Showing some discoloration.
Okay, and we've got the original exhibit here that's getting processed. We'll get that over to you here shortly, and you can publish off that. Courts.
Judge, I've also got it on my screen. Could we do that by HDMI?
You could do that as well if that's a accurate.
So would you approach and look at this to see that it's a true and accurate?
Can we do that by HDMI?
Judge Counsel has acknowledged it's the same picture.
Okay, as long as it corresponds with the actual exhibit.
He's
Exhibit
so
19 is
funny.
admitted. It's the paper document of the entire report with the pictures. If you want to select one of the pictures to publish, we'll do that. I understand this is also a
Hey, TT.
photograph, death scene photograph. The court's not going to publish to
Hi,
the
Ave.
public. It's going to be published to the jurors and the parties only based on a graphic content.
They're showing
Your Honor, may I have
pictures of
permission to
Tammy's
stand
body.
here during this part of the cross-examination so I can have a vantage point for the screen?
You may.
I think so, Austin. So Chad can see these pictures? Ooh, if he can see those on that monitor.
Oh, it's up there. The magic.
Oh my God, magic.
So, ma'am, you're looking at what's part of 19, Exhibit 19. Do you recognize that?
Dude, it's a dead body and he says magic. This guy.
And the old bruises that you were talking about, are those reflected on the two what look to be discolored marks on Tammy Daybell's arm?
Yes.
And that's what you saw on that day, correct?
Yes.
And those are the old bruises that you talked about that you identified on her body on that day, correct?
Yes.
Okay, Judge, that's all I have at this point with this.
Seriously? He had to
Right.
put her arm on screen just for that? Pryor, you are
So
dirty.
you testified earlier and you used the words, if I don't deem it necessary. If I don't deem it necessary that an autopsy is done, it's my decision alone to decide whether an autopsy is done, correct? Your decision alone to decide whether an autopsy is done, correct?
It's ultimately my decision.
Right.
Yes.
And you looked at these old bruises that you identified, correct?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And you looked at the foam coming from the mouth, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I didn't see any other marks or any other indication of anything other than the lividity that you talked about, correct?
Correct.
And based on that, you then issued a death certificate, right?
Yes.
Now, before you issue a death certificate, you have an obligation, do you not? Before you issue and sign that death certificate? Are you aware of your obligation?
Yes.
Okay. And that obligation is that you want to attest, but when you put your signature down on that death certificate, you want to be sure that what you're signing is true and accurate to the best of your ability based on the information you have at the time of the death. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And at that point, the death certificate, and Judge, I'm not going to publish Exhibit 20, but Exhibit 20 reflects that death certificate. You talked about pulmonary edema, and then there was another cause for this, right?
He's that
Another
edema.
another reason why you cited her, two things that you cited as part of what you felt was her death, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you did talk to Chad, and he talked to you about the fact that Tammany vomited the night before, correct?
Yes.
And you had mentioned about the stomach. Was that stomach completely full?
No, not completely.
Right. And were you aware, when you were there, did you talk to Garth about the fact that he bought Tammy a quarter pounder and some French fries that night? Did you discuss that with Garth?
No.
Okay. But when you went through the autopsy, you found potatoes in her stomach, right?
I didn't identify it.
Okay.
I just saw the stomach contents.
Okay. But you weren't able to identify that there were potatoes in her stomach.
I didn't know what it was.
And you didn't identify the fact that there was any site of a quarter pounder or anything like that, correct?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
So when you said that you found it unusual that her stomach was full, it wasn't really full. It just had contents in it. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So we really don't know whether Tammy Daybell threw up that night, other than the fact that Chad said she did. Right?
Right.
And when you showed up, Chad Daybell is sobbing. He's crying and he's telling you how his wife threw up the night before, correct?
Yes.
Went to sleep and she fell off the bed. And based on the lividity, his story is consistent with what the lividity findings you had, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now you also had an opportunity to look at Officer Greenall's report, correct?
Yes.
And you saw that the number of medications that Tammy Daybell was taking, correct? Do I need to refresh
yeah.
your recollection with it again? Do you need to
No,
see it again?
I saw it.
You saw it? You sure?
Yes.
So on page 1 of Officer Greenall's report, and the comment was that they're on the table every morning and she takes them to help her. You recall seeing that in Officer Greenall's report?
Yes.
And you discussed that with Officer Greenall, right? You discussed what Tammy Daybell was taking as part of your investigation, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay, so you're aware that she was taking fluoxetine, thank you. Fluoxetine, which is Prozac.
Yes.
She was taking acetaminophen.
A
She
dumma.
was taking ibuprofen, right? Vitality extracts, immunity, energy, grapefruit, peppermint. I'm sorry, and I apologize. Vitality extracts for immunity, energy,
Hooked on
grapefruit, and
phonics.
peppermint.
Hooked
You
on
saw that as
phonics
well,
with
right on the
Pryor.
table, right?
I recall it was in the cupboard.
Right. You recall that was in the cupboard? That
The
wasn't on the
kitchen.
table?
Not the bedside table, the kitchen cupboard.
Well, when Officer Greenall says, Chad showed me all of the over-counter medicines she takes, she said she has approximately 10 bottles on the table every morning. So would you be mistaken possibly that Officer Greenall must have made a mistake in her report, or do you just don't recall correctly?
Doesn't it say in her report, the cupboard?
Oh, it talks about what was in the cupboard and that there were other things in the cupboard in addition to these things. But Officer Greenall talks about this being on the table. You don't remember that?
There's a picture of those medications in the cupboard in the kitchen.
Okay. And then equate cough medicine, right?
Yes.
Essential oil respiratory blend, right?
Yes.
And then lastly, supplement for bruising and sore muscles. Remember that as well?
Yes.
And then there is a reference that most of what was in the cupboard were essential oils, natural remedies, and some pain medication. Okay?
Yes.
So this cupboard was full of a number of essential oils, right?
Yes.
This cupboard was full of natural remedies, correct?
Yes.
And this cupboard was included in all of these things as well. A lot of medicine that she was taking, right?
Natural. Yes.
And there's no doubt in your mind that Tammy Daybell was the one taking all of these medications, right?
That's what we were told. Yes.
Okay. And Chad talked to you about Tammy having minor fits and shaking consistent with fatigue, right?
Consistent with syncopal.
Minor fits. that were
Syncopal
consi-
episodes.
She had,
Yeah, Mr. Pryor, please let her finish her answer before you get another question going.
you want me to restate?
Yes, please.
Oh man, Mary, that sucks.
You were told that Tama would have minor fits of shaking, which were consistent with seizures, correct?
Yes.
Now, when you have a seizure, you're aware that you don't need to have a heart condition or a problem with your organs in order to have a seizure, right?
It's in the brain.
Okay. But when in the brain is the seizure, it doesn't necessarily mean you have a sign of it in your brain, do you?
I'm not a doctor, so I don't.
Okay. But you made an assessment here based on what you said, and you signed a death certificate saying that this was something other than homicide or murder, didn't you?
Initially, yes.
Okay. And then her daughter Emma talked about her mother was trying to take clogging classes, but then in the last month or so wasn't able to keep up and was having some difficulty as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And there was some discussion that Chad was in the temple, and that's part of his faith. I guess we previously talked about a temple, and that's somewhere, I guess, where you practice your religious faith.
Yes.
And during that time while in the temple, she fainted while she was kneeling down, right?
Yes. When she went to stand up. Yes.
Right. And there were other instances where she was having health issues and balance problems as well that were vaguely referenced in the report, right?
Yes.
Okay. So based on the fact that she had seizures, based on the fact that those bruises were nothing new or recent, there was nothing on her neck or face that indicated that she was smothered, choked, or anything like that, you made the determination that there was a medical reason for why she passed away, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, that all changed though, right?
Yes.
And then at some point, you received a call from some police officers in Arizona, right?
Yes.
And they said, hey, we got this situation with Lori Vallow, right?
With Lori.
Yes.
And we got another situation with Lori Vallow and Alex Cox related to the name Brandon Boudreaux, right?
Yes.
And the first situation was with Charles Vallow, right?
Yes.
Did that officer happen to tell you at that time that Chad Daybell isn't implicated or involved in any criminal proceeding against either of those folks? Was that told to you at that time?
Yes, Chad Daybell's name was mentioned with Lori Vallow.
Yeah, but did they happen to tell you that they're not pursuing any charges against Mr. Daybell at that point?
No.
Okay, so that was left out when they talked to you about looking into this thing, right?
Yes.
And then at that point, based on your previous observation of foam in the mouth, right?
Yes.
And the lividity, right?
Yes.
And what those police officers told you when you had your discussion with them, right?
Yes.
At that point, you decided maybe I need to look into this thing a little more, right?
Yes.
And at that point, you helped with the officers getting an order to exhume Tammy Daybell's body.
Yes.
Did you start an inquest per statute into this matter?
I can't answer that.
Well, you can, because did you start an inquest? You read the statute. If there's an allegation someone has been murdered, homicide, suicide, you have the option to start a public inquest.
Hold on before you answer. Grounds.
Counsel should not be interpreting the law at this point, and I don't know if she's able to draw a legal conclusion.
It's a yes or no question, but to the extent it's calling for any legal conclusion, it's sustained.
Okay, well, yes or no. Did you start an inquest?
No. No.
Instead, what you did is you started working with the police officers and the prosecuting attorney.
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
At this point, you then notified the police that you wanted her body dug up, right?
At that point, we were working with the FBI and
Okay.
police from different locations.
Oh,
Yes.
so the FBI was involved as well, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so.
And at that point, there was an order to have Tammy's body removed from the ground, right?
Yes.
Now, as part of your your duties as a coroner, isn't it true that you're also supposed to notify families in regards to any death or suspicious death and let them know what's proceeding in these matters?
I believe that was done.
I believe.
I believe it was.
Do you know what family members they happened to mention that to, that they were digging their mother out of the ground?
I don't recall which ones. No.
Okay. And it was your duty to do that, so you don't recall your duty of having to notify them that they're digging their mother out of the ground. Right?
I work closely with the investigators
Okay.
through the sheriff's office, our detectives, and
And I didn't ask you about what you did with the investigators, ma'am. I asked you whether you told the family you were digging their mother out of the ground.
no.
Damn.
Was there any other reason you were looking for?
Chad doesn't even
A
move.
reason for why Tammy Daybell could have died other than what you said about the lividity or anything else? Was there any other suspicious circumstances you were looking for?
At the time of her death, no.
And at the time of digging her up, were you looking for something else?
Yes.
What were you looking for?
Suspicious activity, anything that would result in homicide.
Okay. And that was after talking to the police, you were looking for information that would help maybe convince you to change your report to something other than natural causes. Is that right?
After several things happened, yes.
Well, I'm not talking about Brandon Boudreaux or Charles Vallow. We've already established what that's all about. I'm talking about the facts you had when Tammy Daybell was put in the ground. It was lividity, and that really was it, wasn't it?
No, I was told about her past health history,
Okay.
and that played into her cause of death, yes.
Did you happen to look at Teton medical report and see what her past medical history was?
I did review it.
Okay.
Yes.
So then you're well aware that Tammy Daybell had a history of anemia, right?
Past history, not current.
Right. Well, she wasn't being treated because she wouldn't go to the doctor for anemia. You didn't see any indication that she had been cured of anemia, right?
It just stated her past medical
Right.
history.
And based on your information, there's no indication in any single medical report that, amazingly, Tammy Daybell has been cured of her anemia, right?
No,
Okay. You also saw that she had a family history of heart disease and heart problems as well, right?
family history, yes.
Yeah, family history, right?
Yes,
And you're also aware that Tammy Daybell had a difficulty with going and seeing doctors, correct? She didn't like to see doctors, did she?
correct.
In fact, she relied on homeopathic essential oils and minerals to solve her medical maladies, right?
That's what I was told, yes.
Right. Okay. So based on the other information that you had about Tammy's history, you decided that even though there's anemia and there's a past history of heart disease and heart issues in the family, we were still going to dig her up, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
would you agree with me, ma'am? You were basically going on a fishing expedition looking for a reason to change.
Objection, argumentative, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You were basically looking for some reason to dig Tammy up and try to come up with another cause of death, right?
Objection again, argumentative, Your Honor.
Sustained. Ask a question, please, Mr. Pryor.
Voice is getting a little annoyed.
After she was dug up and you went into the and had the autopsy done, right? By the way, where was that autopsy done?
In Utah.
Where in Utah?
I don't recall exactly
Okay.
where we were.
But you were in Utah somewhere, right?
You don't
Yes.
know where you were? What? Was it somewhere for the Mormon church or some shit? What do you mean you don't know where you were?
And Judge, if I could just have a minute.
You may.
That's all I have.
That's
All right,
bizarre.
Mr. Wixom, redirect.
If I may, Your Honor.
Mr. Bailiff?
Okay, we're going to skip over that. Okay, now we have the girl that did Zumba.
Give you clues about Tammy's health.
No,
So did you withdraw based upon what you observed in clogging and in high fitness? Did you ever see anything that would give you any questions or concerns about how healthy she was?
no,
Did you ever see anything about her struggling or not keeping up?
no, not at all.
Did she ever express any concerns about how she was feeling?
No,
And at these classes, did you talk to her regularly?
I did. Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right, thank you.
So this is someone that was in
Lori,
Zumba with her.
Would you tell me, again, when did these clogging classes start?
It was the end of August, early September, and they ran every week. And that was the year 2019.
So it was once a week.
Yes.
And let's say you started in September. So there were a total of 5 classes that Tammy attended before she passed away. Would that be fair?
Yeah, correct.
5 classes.
Yes.
Okay.
A
And the same thing
still-
for the other activity, the high intensity. She only went to one of those though, right?
I could tell she went to more of those. I just attended the one class for my first time.
Well, you don't know whether she attended more. You only saw her at one of those high intensity classes. Isn't that true?
So yes, I did see her.
Okay.
And
Now, I don't want to disparage anybody, but would you describe Tammy's figure as being a body of someone who was extremely fit?
I would say she was a very fit woman.
You'd say she was a very fit woman. Okay.
I would.
Now, you know her daughter Emma, right?
Correct.
And her daughter Emma went to the one high intensity class with her as well, right?
Correct.
And that's the only time you saw Emma and Tammy at the high intensity class that one time, right?
So Emma was a participant as well in my clogging class.
And I'm going to get to that. Emma would stand with her mother at the back of the clogging class and participate in that as well in the very back of the room, right?
Right.
Right. And how many people were in this clogging class?
There were about 7 total.
Okay. And again, if I understand, the clogging classes were twice a week and about the same time, September until Tammy passed in October, right?
Correct. The clogging class was once a week.
Oh, the clogging was once a week? Oh, I'm sorry. I had it down for twice. It was only
The
once.
high fitness class was twice a week.
Oh, but the high fitness, you only saw her there once. The clogging, you saw her for all 6,
Yes.
5 or 6 of the classes she attended that time, right?
Yes.
And her daughter Emma was there right next to her the whole time, correct?
Correct.
So if there were any issues, you're in the front of the class. If there were any issues with her mother, Emma would probably be the best judge of whether there were issues with her mother and her activity and participation level. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
There you go. Emma Emma
Now, you
freaking is going to
said you worked at the
testify
school. You worked in the
that her mom's
cafeteria or
fine.
the food service portion of the school.
Yes.
Tammy was a librarian. You also know that Emma was teaching at that school as well, right?
Right.
And it was frequent in her usual practice for Emma and her mother to get together every time they had an opportunity to do so, right?
Objection, Your Honor, that assumes facts, not evidence.
Same.
Are you aware that whenever there was any free time during the school hours, that it was always Emma and her mother who would spend the majority of the time together?
Yes.
All right. Nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
All right. Can you recross?
Just a couple of questions, if I may, Your Honor.
Very well. I'm sorry, redirect, Mr. Wixom.
Which may, Judge. Ma'am, just very quickly, regardless of the cross-examination.
Judge, I'm going to object.
That's argumentative.
Yeah, fair enough.
Question.
Yeah. With respect to the questions that you were just asked, is there any doubt that you have in your assessment of watching Tammy in clogging class and her performance?
There's no doubt. No.
So you are confident in what you've told
Asked
the
and
jury?
answered.
Overruled.
You are confident in what you've told the jury about your personal observations about Tammy and how she performed?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Any need to recall the witness from the state or the defense?
Not from the defense, Judge.
Not from the state, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. That concludes your testimony in the trial. Thank you for appearing. You may go ahead and step down from the witness box.
I think they bring
Thank you very much for
another
listening.
person from Zumba in too. Yeah, he's rude. He's rude. But he's trying to make it seem like she was unhealthy, so.
All right. The state can call its next witness.
Judge, at this time, the state would call Shanna Miller.
All right, Shannon Miller also attended Zumba. We're going to go to her cross-examination. Or she's the teacher. Sorry, this is the Zumba and high energy fitness instructor.
Good morning, Ms. Miller.
Good morning.
So your testimony is that you first started with the interview process of Tammy in the spring of 2017. Is that right?
Mhm.
That means that she would have started her first year in the fall to start as her job as a librarian. Would that be fair?
Of 2017?
Fall of 2017.
Yes. I
So-
believe that is correct.
Okay. You're not sure, though. It could be 2018.
Well, if I did the math correctly, she had worked there she was in her second year of teaching. The second year would have been 2019 to 2020. So that would have been 2018 to 2019, the year that she started working. Yeah.
So 2018, right?
Yes, it was
Yeah.
2000.
So when you say 2017, you really didn't know Tammy until the spring when you met of 2018, correct?
I would have to do the math on that.
Okay.
Still not convinced.
Well, you know, she was in her second year of teaching at the school when she passed, right?
Mhm.
And in the first year of school, that's sort of a probationary period, right?
Yes. Mhm.
And in that probationary period is when they give you the basic benefits, the start benefits that you have to go through as part of your probation, things like life insurance.
Oh, maybe
and
this
medical
is a
care and all of that.
coworker. I'm
You're
sorry.
given that minimum plan. And then after the first year, that's when you choose to upgrade to add the additional life insurance and death benefits and all that other stuff, right?
Objection, Your Honor. This is outside the scope.
Overruled.
That's when that second year is when you start adding and increasing all of those additional benefits because you've put a year in as your probationary period, right? Ma'am?
I don't know.
Okay.
I
Well, you
can't
worked
answer that.
there.
Yes, I did for 34 years. It was a long time ago.
Okay.
when I
So,
first started working there.
What?
so you're
But I
not,
didn't up my death benefit my second year.
okay. I'm sorry, you what?
I did not up my death benefit the second year that I taught.
But that's not an uncommon thing to up your death benefit in the second year after you get that eligibility, right?
I couldn't answer that.
Right. And you said 2017,
Chad's
but really it was
daughter.
2018 when you first met her in the spring, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Okay. And we had a previous witness who talked about these high intensity classes. And you're telling me that these high intensity classes started when?
They started attending. When they started attending or when they started?
When they started.
The instructor has been teaching those high intensity classes for the last at least 6 years, and she was teaching Zumba before that.
Okay.
High intensity.
So your testimony is that you met Tammy in the spring of 2018. And ironically enough, that was exactly the time she started these high intensity dance classes at the same time,
He
right? And that's how you
keeps saying
became such
that.
fast friends, right?
No, I became friends before that at school.
Okay. With Tammy at school?
Mhm.
She wasn't working there.
Well, shortly after she started working there, obviously we became friends.
Okay. And she started working there in the fall of 2018 as the full-time librarian, didn't she?
Yes.
Okay. So isn't it true, ma'am, that the high intensity classes started in
He says it every time.
September of 2019?
That they started in 2019? No, she'd been attending for at least 9 months prior to that.
Okay.
Actually, it was more like a year and a half because she had started, I remember she'd started in the spring because her and her daughter had expressed that they wanted to get in shape for a 5K. And
Okay.
so some of my coworkers said, well, you should come to High Fit and
Okay.
that will help you get in shape. And that would have been in the spring. So she did it that spring and then that fall.
You should come
then
to
the
High
following
Fit.
spring.
Okay. So in the spring of 2008, when you first met her,
Thank you, Flo, and welcome
basically
on
what happened
Social
in the very
Butterfly.
first spring when you were interviewing her, She signs up for high fitness. She decides she's going to do a 5K. She's going to do all of these
No,
things.
no, we
Let me
hired
finish
her.
My question,
Well,
please.
Mr. Pryor, problem is it's argumentative, so just ask a question, please.
I didn't hear an objection from the prosecutor, Judge.
I know, but in fairness, it's
In
in the long line of argument that she started responding. So just please go with questioning on cross.
And you would agree with me that Emma was there for all of the times that Tammy was involved in that class. Would that be fair?
I believe so.
Okay, so Emma was standing next to her the entire time, right?
They worked out next to each other.
Thank you again,
And
Flo,
did you
and
watch
welcome,
Tammy the entire time
Lolo.
that you participated in these high intensity exercises?
Awesome.
Off and on. I mean, you're always looking around, seeing, what everybody else is doing, if they're following the instructor.
And how many participants were in these high intensity exercise classes?
It would depend. There could be as few as 15, as many as upwards of 24 to 30, depending on the night.
Do you know Kelsey Harris?
Yes.
Okay. Friend of yours?
No. Well, coworker, colleague.
Okay. You don't go to any classes with her, right?
No.
Okay. So how would you evaluate, if you were to make a determination, would you say that Tammy Daybell was very fit?
Yes.
So she had a low body fat? She had a petite figure? Is that what you're
Oh,
telling me?
I didn't hear this.
You don't have to have a low body fat or a petite figure to be highly fit. But what I observed is that she had the stamina from the time she started to the fall that she passed. She had the stamina to be able to
He's an
complete those
ass.
rigorous
Okay.
workouts.
Okay. Judge, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Redirect, Mr. Wixon.
No, Your Honor, we would excuse the witness.
All right, that concludes your testimony. Thank you very much for appearing today. Release from any subpoena, and I'll ask the state if they've got.
What a jerk. I didn't hear that last part. I heard the part where he said, is she fit? But I didn't hear that second part before. What a jackass. So this is another coworker, I believe.
Can you explain to the jury, well, first, did you have interactions with Tammy at work?
I did. She was our librarian.
Could you please explain to the jury how often or
All right, we're going to skip forward. Okay, now they've brought that one cop back in. The one in the blue suit that looks
Okay,
like the
thanks for that.
prosecutor.
Ms. Blake, if you'd like to inquire, you may.
They bring him.
Thank you, Your
back.
Honor. Detective Mattingly, would you please spell your name
Oh,
for the
no, they
record?
didn't. I'm sorry. Take that back. Take that back. This is a different cop. This is a detective. This is a new one. And welcome new members, and thank you, Flobo, for donating memberships.
Last is Mattingly, Mattingly.
Where are you currently employed?
Fremont County, Idaho Sheriff's Office.
Okay, so he's a Fremont County Sheriff. Let's go to his cross. We are almost wrapping up day 9 and 10, guys. We are almost there. Okay, so here we go.
Good afternoon.
Let's try that again. Good afternoon.
There you
Ooh,
go.
that was
sounds great.
creepy
Thank you.
as hell.
Good afternoon.
I was like, who said that? Good
You
afternoon.
mentioned that you had reached out to speak to the family members, the immediately family members. And you know
Smoke
who
them if
those
you
are,
got
right?
them, y'all.
Yes.
I love
know-
you guys.
you know about Emma?
Thanks for
I
being
do.
here tonight.
What are the dates and times that you tried to reach out to Emma to talk to her about this case and the Fitbit and all of that?
Fitbit.
I'd have to go back and look. I couldn't tell you that.
Those to go back and look that could refresh your recollection?
I might, yeah.
Okay, those at the prosecutor's table?
Yes, they are.
With the court's permission, could I allow the detective to refresh his recollection?
Yes.
Can I allow the detective to refresh his recollection? He's such a smart ass. I mean, he is doing a good job, though. I mean, this is a death penalty case, and he's doing it all alone. Brian Koberger has like a whole team. And this dude's doing a death penalty case, and he knows the facts. I mean, he's arguing what he can. You
Your Honor,
gotta
could I
give
ask
him
for
that.
that last question to be repeated back?
Okay, Miss Blake. Flaky Blakey.
Go ahead.
Could I have the one before that?
Thank you.
She read that question. Can I ask the question to be read back?
And it'll be the one before that, I think, too.
Fucking Idaho. She read the question that was asked of her. Oh, shit. You can't make it up. Wait for Koberger trial, man. A freaking shit show. Yes, were you wearing a body cam when you reviewed the Fitbit? He really can't, Oranges. And, he's not really getting paid. Diana
I have
loves
those dates.
Koberger.
I'm sorry?
I don't have those dates.
Oh, you don't have any dates in your notebook reflecting that you tried to speak with Emma Murray?
Oh, no.
Do you have any recordings or any body cams or anything that would help you in determining whether you actually ever did talk to Emma Murray?
Yes, those were recorded.
Those were recorded?
Was recorded, yes.
Attempts to talk to Emma Murray?
Yes.
Okay, but you don't know the times?
I don't.
You don't know the frequencies? The frequency with which you talked to her, how many times?
I talked to her one time.
Do you know what time that was?
It would have been in the afternoon after school.
Yeah, what month was
Look
that?
at Chad organizing his desk. Oh,
No, so long ago, I can't tell you an exact month.
I never noticed my chin was stuck out so
You
much.
approached her after school?
I did.
Okay. Did she try to talk to you?
No.
Okay. And that was recorded, you said?
Yes.
And how was that recorded? By body cam or an audio?
Audio.
Okay. And you still have possession of that audio?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Let's move on to Garth. How many times did you try to talk to Garth?
I was not assigned to talk to Garth.
Okay, so you never spoke to Garth about
That one I
any of
did
these.
not.
You didn't talk to him about this
Wayne's
Fitbit or
World.
anything else,
Wayne's
right?
World.
Okay. And you're the one who was the responsibility to do the research and the investigation on this Fitbit, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And as far as the insurance is concerned, on their mother and Chad, that area was within your exclusive purview as well. Is that correct?
We shared that.
Purview.
With who?
That would be with some of the FBI to review the numbers.
Okay, but essentially you were the contact guy and the initial guy to look into it. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So you didn't talk to Garth.
This guy's voice.
What about Joe Murray?
No, that he refused as well.
Okay. He refused? When did you try to talk to him?
I did not.
Okay.
How did he
We split those assignments up.
How did he refuse then?
Okay, so Emma Murray is Chad's daughter, right?
Correct.
And Joe Murray is married to Emma, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you know Joe Murray because you went and the family you're talking about, you talked to Ed and Charlene Murray, right?
I don't know if I've ever met Joe, but I have.
I didn't ask you that. I asked you whether you talked to Ed and Charlene Murray.
That one, yes, I have talked to them.
And you interviewed them, right?
I did.
So when you're talking to the prosecutor about contacting the family to discuss this, really what you're talking about is the Emma's in-laws, right?
In addition to, yes.
In addition to who else in the family?
Talked with Sam or Tammy's sister, Sam.
Okay.
And her husband, Jason.
Okay. They didn't live in proximity to Chad, right? They didn't live within close proximity of
Close
Chad.
proximity? No, they did not.
Okay. And you're aware that Emma lived kitty corner from Chad's house, right?
He
At the
said
time, yes.
kitty.
You're also aware that Emma and Tammy had a very, very close relationship, right?
I've heard that, yes.
Right. And Joe lives kitty corner with his wife Emma, directly kitty corner from Chad's house as well. Right?
Correct.
Okay. And you're also aware the other person you didn't talk to was Garth. And Garth actually lived with Chad and Tammy for a significant amount of time. You remember that?
I do.
You didn't talk to Garth though, right?
No,
Okay. And then Chad's other child, Seth. Did you ever talk to Seth?
no, I did not.
Oh no,
Okay.
another.
Did you ever
Seth.
talk to Chad's daughter, Leah?
No,
Did you ever talk to Chad's youngest son, Mark?
no.
Okay. But the last three, Garth, Seth, Leah, and Mark, you didn't even reach out to try to talk to them, did you?
I did not. That was for
Okay.
somebody else to do.
Okay.
Who
But
did
nobody
it?
else reached out to talk to him either. Are you aware of that?
No, I believe they did.
Okay. I guess we'll see then, right?
I
So
guess we
the,
will. Who talked to the kids?
Interesting thing I noted was that on the map, I think the MapQuest insurance, it talked about the last known health issue, right? Remember that when the prosecutor brought that up with you?
I do.
MapQuest?
Right. And he put down October 18th, right?
Yes,
Right. And you were aware by reviewing Officer Greenall's report that that was the night that Chad talked about Tammy throwing up and having cough fits, right?
yes.
So that would have been the last known health issue that she would have had the night before she passed away, right?
Objection, Your Honor. This misstates the evidence.
Sustained.
Every time. Sustained.
You're aware that Chad had to take care of Tammy in the middle of the night because she was having fits and throwing up the night before she passed away, right?
Oh, thanks, Lace.
Officer.
Pardon me. That's what I ever heard, yes.
Okay. All right. Now, you reviewed the medical reports, correct, of Tammy Daybell?
I did.
And those were pretty sparse reports, right? Teton was only a couple of pages, right?
Yes.
Right. And on Teton, the first page, and the jury will have a chance to look at that, it talked about Tammy's anemia, right?
As a past history, yes.
Right. And it didn't show anything in the future that Tammy's anemia was ever cured or resolved. You never found any information about that, did you?
None was disclosed as being resolved. It was just listed as past, meaning to me,
Emma
it's
puts
done, it's over.
money on
Well, you don't
Lori's
know if it's done or
books.
over. Are you a doctor?
I am not.
All right. Do you know whether anemia could actually be cured or not?
Through an online search, it says yes, it can be.
Okay. But it takes a certain amount of medication, it takes a certain amount of treatment, it takes a certain amount of prescription drugs and a series of treatment to at least stabilize it. That's what you read, stabilize it, right?
No, I didn't read that about stabilizing.
Well, the question is, where's that medical history that she treated it and cured it?
I don't have that.
Well, you don't have it because it doesn't exist, right?
Oh,
correct?
I don't know if it exists or not. We just don't have that.
Oh.
Okay. But what you do have is that Tammy had a habit of not wanting to go to the doctors to get treatment for anything, right?
Objection, Your Honor, states facts not in evidence.
Sustained.
Sustained
Are
again?
you aware that Tammy did not like to go to doctors and didn't like to get treatment for various medical maladies?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Overruled.
You can answer that, sir.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Tammy didn't like to go to the doctor, right?
Correct.
Okay. And at the time that she was discovered to be dead, are you aware of all the herbal and medicinal medicines that were in her cabinet at that time?
Herbal?
Yeah. She was doing a lot of self-treatment with oils and herbs. Do you recall that?
I do.
Okay. Okay. She was also taking Prozac as a result of that, right? A result of some depression, excuse me.
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the evidence.
Sustained.
Were you aware that she was taking fluoxetine?
I have difficulty with that as well. Fluoxetine.
Fluoxetine, thank you.
Yes.
I'll say it wrong 10 more times and everybody's watching me say that, right? Fluoxetine.
Is this guy a clown or what? We got to go back. 6:15. I'm going to try to do this right. 6:15. Because he's funny. We don't get too many funny moments out of this trial. It's a disgusting, sad case. But man, this lawyering that Pryor does is something else.
Okay. She was also taking Prozac as a result of that, right? A result of some depression, excuse me.
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the evidence.
Sustained.
Were you aware that she was taking fluoxetine?
I have difficulty with that as well. Fluoxetine.
Fluoxetine, thank you.
Yes.
I'll say it wrong 10 more times and everybody's watching me say that, right? Fluoxetine. You were aware she was taking that?
Yes.
Generic form of Prozac.
Yes.
Okay. And that was for depression. And in addition to taking the fluoxetine, she was also self-treating with essential oils, with herbs, and a variety of other remedies, self-help remedies. You're aware of that as well, right?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
I'm asking if he's aware of it, Judge.
Overruled.
Are you aware of it?
Yes.
Okay. And you're also aware that at the time that Chad was interviewed, he was sobbing, he was crying, and he was emotional, right?
I heard that.
Yeah. And at the time that he was still able to say, listen, she had fainting spells, she had dizziness, she had all of those conditions that she described in Officer Greenall's report, correct?
Yes.
Now your wife dies and you discover her because she falls out of the bed. You call 911 and then police officers start interviewing him.
Objection, Your Honor, that's a narrative. The state would move to strike.
Sustained.
So Chad's sobbing and crying, and you're expecting him to recite exactly what her medical history is at the time that he's emotionally distraught about his wife's death, right?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative, and it's a narrative.
Sustained.
The fact that that Chad Daybell was sobbing, would that be a position in your experience where someone would be able to effectively provide information about their medical history and all of the things that may have been going on with their wife?
Through my experience, yes.
Oh, so when someone's emotionally distraught, they're able to recite everything in your experience, right?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Okay. And then we have Garth Daybell, who was described as quiet and reserved, and there really was no effort to talk to him, right? Right?
That I don't know.
Okay. And as someone who's going through shock as described by, Red the Dye, would you expect that he'd be also able to dictate or explain to you what his mother's health history is?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Overruled.
You can answer it.
Given time, yes, through my experience.
Given time, right? After he gets over the fact that they discovered their mother dead on the floor, after that, you give him enough time, he could probably get around to it, right?
Yes.
Okay. You don't know how much time that would be though, right?
It varies from individual.
But your experience doesn't tell you that it's instantaneous, right?
Correct.
Right. Just like Chad Daybell sobbing, it's not going to be an instantaneous answer, is it?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Now, on the life insurance policy, the Primerica account, and let me know when you're ready. Good. Okay. On the life insurance policy, that Primerica account for the 300,000 was established in 2002, right?
April, I believe, yes, 2002.
And on that life insurance policy in 2002, Chad had one for Tammy, right?
Yes.
And Tammy had one for Chad.
Yes.
And the beneficiary in the event that Chad passes away would have been who?
Tammy.
And in the event Tammy passes away, the beneficiary would have been Chad, right?
Correct.
Okay. And they set that up back in 2002, correct?
Yes.
And there was no action on that, right? No other modifications or changes of any significance, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then we go to the map, I'll forget the word, MapQuest, I think it is.
Life map.
Life map, I'm sorry.
No, you're.
Life map, thank you. On Life map, initially the insurance was set at 50,000.
Initially, yes.
Right. And as part of your investigation, were you able to determine that that 50,000 was the base that was available for someone in their first year of employment at the school district?
Yes.
Okay. So Tammy was automatically given the initial 50,000, right?
Yes, she was.
And then after the first year, that's only where she would have been eligible for the additional upgrade to the rest of the insurance, correct?
She would be available, or she had that option to do
Right.
so.
She could have done it or she could not have done it.
Yes,
And that's very cost-effective insurance. Did you look into that?
it is.
Very inexpensive, right?
It is.
Okay. Now, you talked about not being able to locate the Fitbit. Can you tell me who was wearing the Fitbit on the 5 or 6 months that you put those numbers up on the board?
I cannot.
We don't know who was wearing that Fitbit. We don't know if it was Emma, right?
We don't know.
You didn't talk to Emma. You don't know who was wearing it.
I do not know.
You don't know how it was used or how it was. What you're doing is you're explaining to this jury that what you have are basically numbers, right?
I do have numbers.
And what you don't have is you don't have who was using it, how they were using it, or when they were using it, correct?
We know when they were using it.
Okay. Now, I know that you talked to Ed and Charlene, right?
Yes.
So you have some insight a little bit about Tammy and her use of that Fitbit, right?
I do.
Right. And as part of that, you were able to learn that there was a family competition when it came to the Fitbit. Remember that?
I do.
And do you remember when Charlene mentioned on the recording that you taped, and thank you for recording it, that Charlene said that she would go to bed at night and she'd be...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Sustained.
Were you able to gather some information as to the competition between Tammy and the rest of the family regarding the Fitbit?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
Okay, you can answer.
Yes.
And at this point, you were also able to determine, as a result of this competition, that certain activities took place. Certain people would go to bed at night being ahead on their Fitbit device. You learned some information about that?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Sin.
And through your investigation, you learned that person was Charlene Murray, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you also learned as a result that the next morning, surprisingly, Charlene would find that she was now behind on the Fitbit race, right?
Yes.
And do you recall which family members were involved in the so-called competition?
So if I remember correctly, it was Ed and Charlene and Tammy.
Okay. And in interviewing the Murrays, Ed and Charlene, this was a little bit of a, Tammy was a competitive person.
That's what I understand, yes.
Right. Didn't like to lose. Right?
Yes, correct. She did not.
Okay.
How does this guy know?
But you don't know how that Fitbit was used when
How
you
does
were
he
calculating
know?
these numbers, correct?
Correct.
And you don't know who was using that Fitbit and running those numbers up, right?
I do not.
And you also don't know the manner in which those Fitbit numbers were accumulated on the particular device. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mary.
Judge, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, that concludes cross-examination. Ms. Blake, if
Lord
you'd like
have
any redirect, you may.
mercy.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, now they're going over the specific guns of Alex Cox. Let's see. Okay, here we go. This will be our last cut of the day.
15, and we would train with them. We train with them in SWAT training, and we go to the range and shoot.
And you talked about that you were issued an AR-15. What is different between this and an AR-15?
So this rifle that you guys are looking at is actually a 6.5 Grindle. The ones that I was issued is an AR-15 that shoots 223s or 5.56. So the caliber is just that different. The lower is all the same. You just need to switch out the upper.
And based on your experience with both assault rifles and paintball guns, what part of this firearm did you believe could appear to be a paintball gun?
So if you look right here where this scope is, it is on the top of the rifle. On a paintball gun, the hopper is sometimes off to the side a little bit, just right about there on the rail. But
Hang
in
on,
my
I'm getting the
experience,
exhibity.
they've made paintball guns so advanced now that it could be on the top or on the side.
And do they make some paintball guns to resemble assault rifles?
Yes.
And what is the hopper on a paintball gun? What's the function of the hopper?
The hopper on the paintball gun is where you put your paintballs inside, and that's what holds them. And when you shoot them, that's what comes out of the barrel.
There we go.
And we will come back to that exhibit in a bit.
Oh, for Christ's
Judge,
sake.
can I have a reminder of what number that was again? I have a 281A. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. Thank you, Your Honor.
As part of your investigation, we talked earlier that on October 19th of 2019, you had not heard the name Alex Cox. Is that correct?
Correct.
At some point, did you learn the name Alex Cox?
Yes.
And was that through the investigation?
Yes.
Who was Alex Cox in relation to Chad Daybell?
Alex Cox was Chad Daybell's brother-in-law.
And before Chad and Lori were married, what was the connection between Chad and Alex?
Before they were married, I couldn't tell you.
So Lori Vallow was the connection between the two?
Lori Vallow.
And ultimately they became brother-in-laws?
Yes.
As part of the investigation, do you recall looking at an account, some searches done on a Homer J. Maximus account?
Homer
Who was that
J.
account associated with?
Maximus.
Alex Cox.
And you did review some of the data in relation to some Homer J. Maximus searches, correct?
Google
Yes, I
searches
did.
for Alex.
Did you review the whole thing?
I did not.
Did you focus on a specific time frame?
Yes.
And what time frame did you focus on?
Roughly around the time of the shooting, or the attempted shooting, excuse me, on October 8th, 2019, and a few days after that.
Is it fair to say that there were quite a few searches on this account?
Yes.
And were there other searches on the days that you reviewed?
Yes.
In preparation for your testimony today, did you create an exhibit?
Yes.
Do you believe that the exhibit would assist in your testimony today?
Yes.
Do you believe it would aid the jurors in understanding?
I do.
Your Honor, I have what's been marked as State's Exhibit 107B. Similar to others, it is on a jump drive, but I do have courtesy copies of the slides printed for counsel, the court, and Your Honor.
She said,
and I would ask that the witness be shown the printed out 107B.
She said jump drive. The jump drive. We're going back to like 2002. All right, let me get this set up so y'all can see the exhibities. You can see the twins right here. Thank you guys for meeting our goals. We're going to spin the wheel tomorrow on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are live here every Monday and Friday, no matter what the reason or the season.
You buzzed?
Someone asked me earlier if I was buzzed.
Thank you.
The answer is no.
And if you could look through those slides, Detective.
Good evening, Kels.
Do those appear
Dang,
to be an
that's a
accurate
busy
depiction of the PowerPoint
evening.
created?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of State's Exhibit 107B.
Any objection?
Judge, for demonstrative purposes, there won't be an objection.
All right.
And Your Honor, this is a summary exhibit.
Okay, as a summary exhibit, Exhibit 107B has been admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask permission to publish.
You may publish.
Commodore 64. Ooh, let's see what he says. Maybe you should go back to the beginning, he said. What does that mean? Maybe try
And
it
Your Honor, I
again.
have the HDMI cable plugged in, but this is not my screen showing.
Oh, for
Okay,
God's
we will
sakes,
see.
HDMI. Get it together.
So there's a lot of butt joint.
That dang HDMI.
Wake up.
You can't make it up, guys. You just can't. Look at her. Mr. Bailiff, could you help me plug in my HDMI? Good grief. This is Idaho. No offense, but they're using an overhead projector with like a light bulb in it. And they keep talking about having to use
And
it.
Your Honor, I'm just looking at the time. I will indicate it's still not showing my screen.
Yep.
And so where it is 3:17, I don't know if the court would like to consider convening early today, and I will work with IT to make sure that I have it ready for tomorrow.
Judge, there won't be any objection to that. I
Okay,
understand.
thank you. It does make sense. We've got some kind of a tech gremlin going around this afternoon. We'll try to sort that out for.
Dude, they had to end. Are you kidding me? After I got my screen set up and everything, she said, it's still not showing up, Judge. Can we just convene for the day? What? Let's see what ends up happening.
Tomorrow, council, and I know you had it just working, so we'll work with tech. So with that,
This
we are
seems
going
fake
to
to
conclude
me.
evidence for the day.
That seems fake as fuck. Let's see what this is about.
All right, we're on the record again on KCR 22-21-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. We've got three separate motions to take up this afternoon. Actually, two motions. One is a notice from the court on a issue relating to designation of victims. So, as a first initial comment, I'll just make, we did get these motions in limine under seal, and I did find it was appropriate to have them sealed for a couple of reasons under ICAR 32. First, we were at the time we did not yet have a jury seated and impaneled, and we do now. Secondly, there are still some unredacted personal identifiers.
Look at them
contained
getting
in
all
some of the
tidy.
exhibits that go with the motions. And for that reason, I've determined we'll hear the motions argued here in open court. That part will be part of the public record at this time. The motions in limine, and I'm referring to a motion in limine filed in the case under seal March 4th and another on March 14th. Those motions themselves are at this time going to remain sealed probably through the duration of the trial, but would likely be unsealed afterwards once appropriate redactions are also entered. So that's just the posture of how we're going to argue things today. In addition, as I mentioned, we had the issue that came up on the court issuing an order with a request that we discuss the designated, if any, victims for the case for purposes of both sorting out the exclusionary rule and who that applies to, as well as any potential victim impact statements that may come into play in the case. So there are two motions from the state, and I don't really necessarily have a preference as to what order we take those up in. Maybe we could start with the designation of victims in the case and then move on to the motions in limine. Who would be arguing, if there is any argument for the state in terms of whether or not a designated victim would be appointed in the case for those reasons? So who from the state will address
I
that?
don't really understand.
I can, Your Honor.
All right.
I can, Your Honor. Rob Wood.
The court did send out a notice, basically just requesting clarification of that, where we're at in this stage of the proceedings. I'd like to know if the state is intending to make any designation of victim. Victims are designated by Idaho Code 195306, as well as the State versus Shackelford case does some analysis of that. We dealt with that in our previous trial. Other victims simply qualify based on familial relationship, but the designation is something that needs to be determined by the court. So, Mr. Wood, if you'd like to address that, I'll hear from the state.
Thank you, Your Honor. In terms of designated victims, or I think trying to remember the terminology used last year, but the victims who stand in the place of someone else, we would ask again that Kay Woodcock be allowed, as she was in the last trial, to stand in for Charles Vallow. Last year, Summer Shiflett had been a designated victim representative for Tylee Ryan. This year, that would be Annie Cushing, who actually has the same relationship to Tylee Ryan, just through Tylee's biological father, Joseph Ryan, who's deceased. Other than that, all the victim information would be the same as it was in the co-defendant's trial.
Okay, and to be clear then, the Annie Cushing would be the sole designee, right? We're not asking for multiple designated.
We're not asking for multiple designees. There would be other victims related to Heidi Ryan, such as her brother Colby.
Okay.
But in terms of the designee, just Annie Cushing. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Does the defense have any input or statement or argument on the issue, Mr. Pryor?
Judge, as far as the designation of Kay Woodcock and Annie Cushing, I don't think I have an objection to that.
Okay, counsel, without walking through, I would incorporate the analysis. It wasn't the other case, but we did an analysis through an order in the case previously. I think I've got a printed copy of that order here. In KCR 2221-1624, State of Idaho versus Lori Vallow, some of the same people here. And in that memorandum decision and order talking about and the court's order excluding witnesses and reviewing both Idaho Code 1953-06 and State versus Shackelford 155 Idaho 454, the court incorporates that analysis and without objection would determine that Kay Woodcock would remain as a designated victim in the case and not subject to the exclusionary rule. Also permitted to make a victim impact statement if the case ends there. And that becomes an issue. In addition, that Annie Cushing, based on that
They don't even
relationship
move.
that's been not objected to, the court also finds it's proper as a designated victim under both the statute and the Constitution. So I'm trying to recall, I think there may be a form through the prosecutor's office that victims form that a victim witness coordinator would provide or something, but I'll make the record here on this ruling. And then if there's any follow-up we need of any further submission, we'll either advise the state or the state can just get that filed.
And it was my understanding that those had been filed, but if they have not, or if there's any clarifications needed, we will certainly take care of that.
Okay, that will conclude that issue then as it relates to defining victims in the case. So then we've got remaining the motions in limine, and I'll note that there are two separate. There's a motion in limine filed March 4th, 2024, and that relates to a proposed statement the state seeks to introduce relating to a statement made from a witness, Janice Olson, regarding Tammy Daybell's life insurance coverage. The other motion was filed March 14th, titled the second motion in limine, and that as it relates to statements the state wishes to introduce through testimony of witness Janet Anderson relating to alleged statements about Tammy Daybell being called, quote, or that she is a zombie is the quote. So why don't we start procedurally then with the earliest filed motion first on the life insurance and Janice Olson, and I'll hear your argument on that, Mr. Wixom.
Thank you. Would Your Honor prefer that I do it from the table or the podium?
The table's fine, Mr. Wixom.
Thank you.
Zombie.
Your Honor, I won't
weird.
assume, that given the breadth of this case and the time that's passed, that the court has these motions memorized, but I do intend to simply provide a brief overview and then respond to any questions or inquiries the court might have.
All right.
Judge, with respect to this first motion in limine, I think as explained in the motion, Janice Olson was a coworker of Tammy Daybell's at the school that she worked at. Apparently, at least a friendly acquaintance, if not a friend, someone that she had lunch with and visited with and talked to. Janice Olson, back in, I believe, May of 2020, was interviewed by Detective Bruce Mattingly. In that interview, she had explained to Detective Mattingly that by her timeline, her best estimate, roughly, I believe it was a month before Tammy passed was the time that she attached to it. She and Tammy had been visiting at the school, and Tammy had made I'll characterize as a passing comment to the effect that my husband wants me to up my insurance. Something to the effect of, I'm getting closer to retirement, but he wants me to up my insurance. Subsequent, we believe to that, and perhaps the application was filed before the conversation. We aren't certain, but they were clearly close in time because this occurred the first part of that school year. An application was submitted to the appropriate administrator at the school that was signed by both Chad and Tammy that effectively requested an increase of life insurance from the school provided $50,000 to add an additional $80,000 that was an optional coverage that Tammy would have to pay for. But that application, in fact, was submitted, signed by both Chad and Tammy. The state believes that
the state,
if the court does rule that this evidence that would come in the form of Janice Olson's testimony, repeating what she had heard from Tammy, which includes a statement from Chad, that if the court rules that it is admissible, that it would be.
Okay, so they're arguing
through an order in the case
about her life
previously.
insurance
I think I've got a
being
printed
upped.
copy of that order here in KCR 2221-1620.
So Tammy upped her life insurance, and I think they're trying to argue whether that's going to be admissible or not. But does Pryor not stand up? Hang on.
The last minute attempt or approach. The defense, Tammy, after that, said, "I'm not a zombie," and it appeared to.
Hang on.
Janice Olson, back in, I believe, May of 2020, insurance, and in fact did receive a claim check for the full amount. If a jury were to find that, then clearly Mr. Daybell, under Idaho law, as cited in the brief, would be precluded from taking that benefit under what's called the Idaho Slayer statute. You cannot take someone's life and financially benefit from that. So it's relevant to that point. It's also relative to the conspiracy to commit murder charges and the murder charges, in that it would tend to show an intent, motive, plan of Mr. Daybell and or his co-conspirators to take the life of Tammy Daybell. Your Honor, we understand in this context that Ms. Olson's testimony about what Tammy said her husband had said has two layers to it. The first layer would be Mr. Daybell's statement about wanting Tammy to up the insurance. That, we believe, would not come in under the hearsay, would not be prohibited by a hearsay objection, because under the rules of evidence, it would be a statement by a party opponent and specifically excluded from the definition of hearsay. So as we've laid out in the brief, we don't believe that there really is any basis for a hearsay objection to exclude that statement on that element. Now, the second layer would, of course, be Tammy's relaying to Janice Olson that my husband said I wanted the insurance up. To the extent that is a statement from Tammy to Janice, we believe that under the Idaho Rules of Evidence 803(3), that would be admissible by this court as a statement that Tammy did in fact make as to her own mental and physical state. We believe that's true for a few different reasons. Effectively, we believe that when Tammy tells Janice, my husband wants me to up my insurance, she is in that same breath effectively indicating that that's not necessarily her wish. She is just communicating her husband wants the insurance. That, Your Honor, I think is reflective of Tammy's intention or lack of intention with respect to a desire to increase the insurance. To some extent, it likewise goes to Tammy's feeling of good health. I think generally there's a tendency for people to maybe increase life insurance if they feel like there's more likely to be a claim, if there could be a health issue. If someone is feeling healthy, they might be less likely to worry about increasing and taking on the cost for life insurance. So I do think there's some element and aspect of this that does show Tammy's self-perception as to her health. But it certainly goes, I believe, to distinguish her intent from Mr. Daybell's intent. And that is important because, Judge, we believe that in this case, and I have no doubt with the case overall, this court is familiar with State versus Abdullah, another Idaho death penalty conviction. Likewise, I suspect the court is also familiar with State versus Radabah, both cited in the brief. They both stand for the proposition that statements of a victim may be admitted for purposes to help explain, well, really for explanatory circumstances as to either a defendant and
3 or 4 years.
Okay, here's Pryor fighting back.
Insurance or not? Insurance or not?
Case law in the brief.
There we go.
Likewise,
Here's Pryor's argument.
Bryant, a U.S. Supreme Court decision that addresses a potential confrontation clause objection. The test in that context is whether or not at the time the statement was made, let me back up, the analysis this court has to perform on that objection is whether or not that statement comes within the definition of testimonial evidence. The case as cited basically gives this court the factors to look at to determine that would be at the time the statement is made, was it intended to be used in any kind of legal or court proceeding? That's effectively what the test is that this court is called upon by the case law to look at. In this instance, we think that that's a clear no. This statement from Tammy to Janice, as made from Chad, was made roughly a month before Tammy even passed, long before charges were even brought. There's no indication at that point that Tammy would have any idea that any kind of criminal charges or proceedings would be initiated. And so frankly, we do believe under that test, there simply is no viable confrontation clause objection to be had against the evidence. Judge, I think that that is a nutshell overview. I'm happy to try to address any specific questions or inquiries the court may have, but I think that captures essentially what the state's argument is in the situation.
All right, thank you for the argument, Mr. Wixom. I do have the briefing. I don't have any specific questions for you at this time, so I will hear from the defense. I would note we did receive an objection from the defense filed on March 7th. Mr. Pryor, if you'd like to argue in opposition, you can do that.
And Judge, can I have permission to remain seated?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor, for that. Judge, this is one of the concerns that I have primarily. You know, we're talking about Mr. Daybell allegedly making a statement to his wife. And then allegedly Tammy Daybell taking that statement that she heard from her husband, relaying that to a third party, and that third party then getting in court and testifying about that statement. That's Judge, that's riddled with a lot of complications. And I don't agree with counsel saying that it's an exclusion to the hearsay rule. If you look at the present 803, I believe it was 803.3 that counsel cited.
It was.
Judge, that has nothing to do with a statement about whether someone wants to get insurance or not. It has nothing to do with it. And as creative as Mr. Wixom would like to be in terms of suggesting that somehow that has anything to do with my current medical, emotional, or physical condition, it doesn't. Getting medical insurance or getting life insurance or whatever the case may be is an issue that deals really exclusively, it's a financial issue. Do we want to spend the money to do this? Do we want to invest in this? The other issue, Judge, is it's abundantly clear by the testimony from Officer Mattingly. The minimum was $50,000. And at the time they wanted to up the insurance, it was the first opportunity for them to be able to do that. And they chose in an inexpensive way to spend money to do that. But what this in essence is going to do is it's going to create a confrontation clause issue in a number of ways. But primarily the problem is also that what it's going to in essence do is it's going to require Mr. Daybell to have to respond to this because there's nobody else who can respond to this. And you're putting him in a position where the prejudicial impact of making that statement has to be balanced against Mr. Daybell's constitutional right to remain silent and not offer any testimony. By allowing this to come in, we're jeopardizing that right for Mr. Daybell. The other issue, Judge, is that the prosecuting attorney has had this information, from what I understand, for 3 or 4 years. And as the trial is starting and as the trial is progressing, they file a motion in limine while the trial has already commenced. And if the court recalls that back on the close in time
before trial, but it was in March. It was March 4th.
Okay. But the difficulty, Judge, is that at the last motion in limine that they brought, the court said you're getting tired, or at least you're growing weary of all of these motions in limine. They had ample time to bring this up. And the prejudice to defense counsel, is significant, because the jury could easily read that and say, oh, the grand conspiracy. Mr. Daybell must have said that to Tammy. Tammy must have said that to this witness. And now this witness is going to testify about what she said. Judge, there's no way for me to defend that. There's no way for me to challenge that short of putting Mr. Daybell on the stand, unless there was somebody else. And I haven't had sufficient time, nor will I have sufficient time, to even investigate whether there were other people involved or other people who heard this. So again, Judge, aside from the hearsay issues, and it doesn't fall under 8033, Judge, aside from the confrontation issue, Judge, the prejudicial impact that it would have on this case and the bias that it would present greatly over
how do you think he's going to rule
the value of this information? And I think that it would put Mr. Daybell in a very prejudicial place and force him to make decisions about how we're going to tactically proceed to address that. And I just think at that point, Judge, I think the court would be making a mistake by allowing the prosecutor to bring this forward and do that. And again, it's riddled with hearsay issues as well.
All right, Mr. Wixom, any rebuttal argument?
I believe very briefly, Judge. First, as to the argument that this is some kind of a last-minute attempt or approach, the defense did point out that the state has had this for years. I'm sorry, the state has had this information for years, but so has the defense. This was disclosed back to the defense by my records, July of 2020.
Well, there's so much information, Mr. Wixom, and like putting somebody on notice of what statements that are, non-party statements or non-direct statements, it's the timing of putting them on notice in a motion in limine. I think that in fairness, just because it may have been disclosed somewhere, I do have some concern with the timing. I'll just address that.
Okay. Well, with respect to Your Honor, I understand that. I would simply just point back to the cases cited in the brief. I understand it's the court's discretion how it handles and treats motions in limine. I think in the case law, and certainly in my experience, motions in limine are often not brought until during trial. Often they're brought before trial, and I understand that. We do believe that we simply argue to the court that because of that disclosure, the defense shouldn't be caught off guard, respecting what the court just said, and I'll leave it at that. Your Honor, I do want to go back to Rule 8033. That exception does not just address physical, but perhaps that's all I raised, but also addresses emotional and mental state of the victim. And so a mental state, such as an intention to increase or not increase insurance, or a statement about physical health. I don't necessarily need to increase the insurance. My husband wants this done. So I do think that 8033 does clearly apply. Judge, with respect to some of the other arguments as to what this does, the state is here today because we believe we have a lot of prejudicial evidence against the defendant. That's why the charges have been brought, and that's why we're spending the time of the trial. To argue that just because a piece of evidence is prejudicial, it should be excluded, well, Judge, that's the nature of a criminal proceeding. Now, we don't believe that it substantially outweighs the probative value. There are some cases cited in the brief, particularly with respect to things like graphic murder crime scene photos that the courts have repeatedly ruled that even though they are highly prejudicial to the defense, they are nonetheless admissible by the state for the purposes of meeting their high burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And so the arguments that are being made by the defense in that regard really are weight questions. They're arguments that he can be making during closing argument. Certainly, he can also address this issue of suggesting that it forces the defendant to take the stand simply is not correct. The defense counsel certainly has the ability, and we've seen him perform so far in this case, to cross-examine witnesses, and he would be able to address this through cross-examination of Ms. Olson. So it doesn't force or back the defendant into having to take the stand to defend himself. But really, in addition to that, in any criminal proceeding,
I thought he was going to be
defendant is
short.
effectively put into place, or if they choose to meet any given piece of evidence, they may just have to make their own strategic decision whether they wish to waive the right to remain silent and defend themselves or not. And so I don't think it's an unfair argument to be made by the defense. I just don't think that they should succeed in that argument in this situation. This court can see from the record that this defense attorney is very aggressive with cross. He's very thorough. He's prepared. So I really think the state would argue to Your Honor that it simply isn't a viable argument to object upon. Under the Confrontation Clause, I've already cited that case law. I believe that the state will, I'll rest on that issue and let the court make its decision, but that's all I have.
And Judge, Mr. Wixom brought up a couple things. And I just want to touch on one matter.
For God's sakes.
And Judge, quite frankly, 404B is designed to give us notice and give us an opportunity to address these very issues. 404B does not apply to defense attorneys. It applies to the prosecution, and there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is that you don't want to get sandbagged by some motion close to or near the time for trial, and they bring up some obscure fact
Sandbag.
that says, "Oh, by the way, we're going to use this," and they bring up some obscure fact that says, "Oh, by the way, we're going to use this, and we're not going to give defense counsel an opportunity to do that." So I don't know where the good cause is to show that they are able to get around this and then say, for 4 years we've had this information, and on the eve of trial we're bringing this forward. And on the last note, I appreciate Mr. Wixom saying that about me on national TV about my skills. But I don't necessarily agree with him completely, but it was very kind of him to say that.
All right, well, a couple of comments. First, I'm going to take the matter under advisement. I'll get an oral ruling for you tomorrow morning. 8:30 is the planned time to do that on this issue. I'll note that I don't think that 404B is implicated in this. However, under 403, the question the court looks at, it's been argued a lot of different ways here, but it's right in the rules, whether or not probative value is substantially outweighed by unfair prejudice. So not everything gets to be weighed by the jury if the court makes a balancing determination, even if it is admissible. And if the court determines that probative value would be substantially outweighed by unfair prejudice. So I am going to take that one under advisement. In terms of the next motion, counsel, I'd like to hear argument on that. I don't want to reiterate or go back into 403 balancing other matters we just argued on the first motion to the extent they apply to the second motion, but it has its own unique issue and a separate brief filed by the state, and the timing as well is different. So this is the March 14th motion, second motion in limine in relation to a state's seeking introduction of a statement by a witness, Janet Anderson, quote, "She is a zombie," as it relates to Tammy Daybell. With that, Mr. Wixom, if you'd like to present argument on that motion. And I will note on that motion, I believe the motion referenced exhibits that I don't think were ever received by the court, and I'll look if they're not in by now.
So
I'm
no
finding them
decision
untimely
on
and won't consider
the life
if this
insurance
is the
yet.
motion I'm thinking of. It did not have attached exhibits, but otherwise I understand the content and context of the motion, so you can argue it.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I think I can be more brief. I don't have any desire to be redundant, but I would first note to the court, this is actually a two-part motion. There are two witnesses with two statements. The court has accurately reflected that we were seeking an order allowing us to introduce testimony from Janet Anderson, a school secretary, who indicated that she heard a conversation between Tammy and another coworker, where Tammy indicated that her husband said she is a zombie, and that Tammy, after that, said, "I'm not a zombie," and appeared to be laughing that off and walking it away. And that was relatively close time to the time of Tammy's death. The second statement, to be clear, is a statement from a witness, Pam Peebles, who is a school teacher at the school, who was interviewed back in May 2020. She did give a statement. She's what we'll call a health witness. We have anticipated calling her in preparation for testimony just a couple of months ago, relative in time to that we filed the motion. She actually, on her own fruition, made an additional statement where she says that Tammy told her that this is the best I have ever felt in my life, and she was excited about getting ready for a race. Now, she indicates that that was told to her by Tammy on the Thursday before Tammy passed the following Saturday, 2 days later. Judge, we believe that those statements are both admissible. We do understand the timing issue, but in this situation, we're not sure the state could have provided them in a more timely manner. We did provide them before trial. Those two pieces of information both came up in trial prep, roughly early March. Rather than going through all the applicable rules, I would just make one quick argument. While certainly I understand the objection the state or the defense may make as to the timeliness and ability to respond, in these situations, I don't think the defense, or frankly the state in other situations, are left in any different position than if any given witness says something brand new on the stand during a trial, which we've all seen happen many times, that no one had ever heard before. They would be left in that position where they would simply have to respond on the fly. They don't have to do that here. And in this case, very close in time after these were disclosed, relayed to the state, they were disclosed to the defense, albeit a few weeks before trial, but at least the defense has had the benefit and no less benefit than the defendant or the state did to respond and figure out how to handle this evidence. And so I'll just leave my argument at that. We do believe that both of those pieces of evidence should be admitted to trial.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wixom. And I will not all incorporate, of course, in any decision, the briefing that was supplied as well. Mr. Pryor, as to the second motion in limine on the proposed introduction of statements, quote, "She is a zombie" from Janet Anderson, and then Pam Peebles, the health witness, statements, "This is the best I've ever felt in my life," or "excited about getting ready for a race." You can pose any objection you have at this time.
Judge, one of the concerns I have is that these disclosures took place while Mr. Wixom was interviewing these witnesses for their trial prep. Now, that could be addressed potentially in cross-examination, but the difficulty is, again, the appearance, Judge. The appearance that Mr. Wixom is talking to witnesses and doing this, and suddenly they make these disclosures. The first one with, I think it was Janet Anderson, heard a conversation. That's problematic on a number of levels, Judge, and it's problematic that she heard a conversation and she's going to relay a conversation that she heard. That in itself brings up another of evidentiary rules, and then I'll let the court do the analysis as far as hearsay analysis on that. The other one, talking about the other witness, Judge, again, the timing is problematic. And I understand that things happen and people bring up information at the last minute. Those things do happen. But this seems to be a little convenient that suddenly we're bringing up information from the very first motion in limine. Now we have two more additional statements. The only difference, Judge, is these statements, they came about as a result of preparation for trial. And they happen to be witnesses who are on the very side, at least from my perspective, of, on the opposite side of the case. And ironically, I'm not seeing any disclosures that seem to favor the defense or go that direction. And again, I'm not going to reiterate all of the stuff about relevancy, Judge, but the reality of this is that the timing is suspect. And giving me sufficient notice to address these, it's just not there. And again, the prejudicial impact greatly outweighs the probative value.
All right. Well, counsel, they're both under advisement. Take a look through them later today in the morning. I'll prepare a ruling on both so the parties have the benefit of knowing whether or not that information is entitled to be admitted at trial. I do appreciate the sides briefing and arguing it and bringing it forth in a motion in limine. As they say, better late than never.
Better late than never, he says. So that was a last minute thing. The judge will decide. We will do day 11 and 12 next week. So we've got, or no, we'll do day 11 and 12. I have the event up, but I'll change it. I think I made it for Tuesday, but I'm not going to do it Tuesday. I might do it over the weekend. I think maybe a Saturday live. We'll catch up on, today was 11 and then tomorrow will be 12. And then on Saturday, we'll catch up on those 2 days. Sound good? I'll see you then. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow in the Friday Live. Thank you for reaching our goal tonight. We're going to spin the... tomorrow. Good night. Be sure to check out my other videos and playlists for more true crime content. And if that's not enough, you can join our Patreon. Don't have a tinfoil hat? It's okay. We'll make you one. It's that easy. See you guys in the next video.
See you later. Bye.
I don't give a damn. I don't really care about you and your problems. I don't give a damn. You talk way too much. I have heard enough about you and your problems. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. Damn, 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 damn. You wanna be with me. You wanna feel something real, but I'm feeling differently. You're making plans to get to.
Y'all hear me sighing over here.
I heard a garden with like a G.
I ain't got time for that. Staying up late, sleeping all day, dreaming about Cadillacs. Buying new shoes, hanging by the pool, sipping on Coke and Jack.
Is it one Jennifer or two Jennifers?
Jennifer loves horses.
Thanks so much, Jennifer.
Just based on my observations, her hair was very greasy.
Bye, Jennifer.